Folks, I'm Matt, and welcome to the Good Trouble Show. Bipartisanship in Washington, D.C. is about as common as, well, a presidential nominee under the age of 70, except when it comes to UAPs, otherwise known as UFOs. So this colloquy was from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and his Republican counterpart, Mike Rounds, last year.
The United States government has gathered a great deal of information about UAPs over many decades, but has refused to share it with the American people. That is wrong, and additionally, it breeds mistrust. We've also been notified by multiple credible sources that information on UAPs has also been withheld from Congress.
Shortcomings of the conference committee agreement that are now being voted on were the rejection, first of all, of a government-wide review board composed of expert citizens, presidentially appointed and Senate confirmed, to control the process of reviewing the records and recommending to the president what records should be released immediately or postponed, and a requirement as a transparency measure for the government to obtain any recovered UAP material or biological remains that may have been provided to private entities in the past and thereby hidden from Congress and the American people.
It's essential we keep working on our proposal to create an independent presidentially appointed review board that can oversee UAP classified records and create a system for releasing them where appropriate to the public. We will keep working. I want to assure the American people, Senator Rounds and I will keep working to change the status quo.
In 2023, Senator Schumer and Rounds introduced the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act of 2023. This act, literally 63 pages in length, would have forced the Pentagon and the Central Intelligence Agency to come clean with Congress and the American people on the reality of UAPs. Now, this landmark bill used the phrase non-human intelligence over 23 times. I mean, 23 times. How often are you going to hear a piece of congressional legislation talk about non-human intelligence? It would have also established a presidential UAP advisory board and would have forced any government entity or contractor to disclose what crashed UFOs they had in their possession. And trust me, they have a lot. They could probably open up a Uber with all of what they've got stuffed into the garage. So this act passed the Senate with unanimous bipartisan support. That is until Republican Mike Turner, chair of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, torpedoed the bill. Now note that Congressman Turner is one of the largest recipients of campaign donations by defense contractors. He also happens to represent the district of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where it's located there in Ohio. And Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has been heavily involved in analyzing crashed UAPs since the Roswell crash of 1947, if not longer. So fast forward to 2024, and behind the scenes, members of Congress are absolutely enraged as they realize the Pentagon and the CIA, in coordination with around 50 non-elected government officials, have been illegally hiding from congressional oversight off-the-books waived special access programs dealing with UFOs, the recovery and back engineering of crashed UFOs, and their effort to weaponize this off-world technology, costing literally billions of dollars in American tax money. I mean, it's insane. Add to that the highly classified disinformation operation targeting Americans in Congress being run out of the Pentagon and the CIA, as well as threats of physical violence and retaliation by CIA cutouts and their security contractors. So you're probably asking yourself, what can I do as the American voter about all of this kind of craziness? Well, today we have two special guests, each part of a growing number of political organizations supporting members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. And people, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, they are all doing excellent work on this topic. All of these folks are fighting for UAP transparency. But first, do us a solid. Please hit the subscribe and thumbs up buttons on YouTube. Leave a comment and let us know what you think about this episode. You can also find us on X at Good Trouble Show and everywhere else at The Good Trouble Show. You can also find us wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Just search for The Good Trouble Show with Matt Ford. We also, as always, need your help keeping the lights on. You can become a Patreon member of The Good Trouble Show by going to www patreon.com/The Good Trouble Show. Sign up and you can be a supporter. Finally, super chats are open on YouTube. Another great way to support the show. And as always, I want to thank our Patreon and YouTube members, our chat moderators who volunteered their time, and of course, all of you at home that are watching. Thank you for the generosity of your time. So you'll probably know I'm a little bit tongue-tied this morning. My family and friends threw a little birthday breakfast for me, and I've had probably a little bit too much cake. So I'm on a bit of a sugar high, we'll say. So hopefully I won't crash in the middle of it. And if I'm a little bit talking a little bit fast, I blame it on the sugar. I also want to thank everybody on X. I don't know how it got out that it was my birthday, but it was literally hundreds upon hundreds of birthday wishes on X and on the other social media platforms. And I just have to say I was flattered. I'm very grateful to have such an amazing group of fans that support our show and support what we are, what we're trying to do here. So anyway, so I hope. Anyway, happy Sunday, and I hope you can tolerate my sugar high. Okay, moving on. So our next guest is no stranger to the UAP topic. He is the founder of the political action group UAP Caucus, which fights for UAP transparency. Please welcome Lester Nare. Lester, how are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Matt. How are you, my friend? Great to be back.
I'm very well, thank you. It's a wonderful Sunday. It's nice and cloudy here in LA, and I'm sure it'll be hotter than hell, and not too long from now. Okay, so Lester, firstly, welcome back. Both you and Ronak have been on our show before to talk about UAP Caucus, but for those of our people in our audience that haven't seen or heard what you guys are up to, tell us, for the folks that have no idea what UAPs are, what are they, and why should the average person at home be concerned about it or even have it on their radar at all?
So there's obviously been a decades-long history related to the UFO subject, but we've seen, in a post-2017 era, there's been a rebrand and a new focus, particularly within not only the U.S. government, but global governments, including Canada. Japan recently released a new UAP caucus. The EU is looking at this issue around this idea of unidentified anomalous phenomenon, effectively objects that appear to be technological in nature, but operate outside known human manufacture. So they display these behaviors, flight characteristics, performance characteristics that seem to be a beyond next generation kind of leap. And so depending on where on the spectrum you fall, if you've been following the UFO issue for a while, or if you're coming to it new, you might have a different interpretation of what the origins are. But ultimately, we have objects flying with relative impunity over the continental United States, as well as over active war zones across the globe. And there has not been a clear communication, at least in our context, by the US government in terms of what are we doing about that and what do we know about it, frankly, which is, as we know, quite a bit more than has been shared with the American public.
So in your opinion, would you say that the government has been complicit in covering this up for literally decades?
I mean, that's what the current available information would suggest. As an easy way to kind of illustrate this, we have ongoing conflicts with Russia in the Ukraine domain, with China in Taiwan, the support we have for Israel in the Middle East. And in all of those cases, when we talk about releasing information that is previously classified, such as, footage from F-16s, F-22s, F-35s of active combat in 4K in those regions, they do so when it's politically advantageous in their view. But for whatever reason, there's been a complete embargo on the same level of transparency around data as it pertains to UAP. And so at a minimum, if you want to be the most sort of generous, it's that. But as we know from the work of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, as well as, again, this long history of folks speaking out about this subject, there's clearly been a concerted effort to manipulate the truth about the origin of the phenomenon.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Pentagon's all domain anomaly resolution office, their congressionally mandated UAP office, which I often refer to as the Pentagon's in-house bullshit factory. So now, at the beginning of the show, I played the clip of Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Republican Mike Rounds following the defeat of their amendment, and literally this colloquy, which is rarely ever done on the Senate floor, was over 20 minutes long. And I encourage for any of you that are watching that have not watched this or viewed this 20-minute colloquy, just look for Chuck Schumer, Mike Rounds, UAP Disclosure Act. It is mind-blowing, because essentially what the Senate Majority Leader and Senator Mike Rounds are saying is that they're basically confirming what you just said, that the government has been hiding this, the Pentagon has not been truthful with the American public, and the Pentagon has been illegally skirting congressional oversight in violation of, I think it's the First Amendment. I'm not quite sure. I'm not an attorney, and certainly not great on congressional law. So that amendment was for the National Defense Authorization Act. So explain to our audience exactly how the NDAA process works and how Schumer and Rounds' UAP Disclosure Act was defeated last year.
Yeah, so this is, I want to quickly just start by also expressing, for people to go, if you haven't already, to listen to that colloquy between Schumer and Rounds. I mean, you're talking about, a member of the Gang of Eight, the most, the group of people within Congress that have the most access to all of the secrets, as well as a senior member that has been involved with the armed services and intelligence intersection in the Senate for quite some time. That bill was also co-sponsored by another member of the Gang of Eight, Marco Rubio, alongside Gillibrand, Senators Heinrich and Senator Young, all relatively, again, senior senators. So this is not a group of young, folks trying to make a name for themselves in
Right.
Congress. They have a lot of political capital to lose. And if you really listen to what they're saying, it's not we think, etc. It's they have credible reason to believe what they're saying is true. So again, if you want to ignore the 80 plus year history of the subject, if you just listen to that colloquy, this is a contemporary, right now, present issue. It's not something about just adjudicating what happened in the past. But speaking to the NDAA process, I think it's helpful to I think there's been a little bit of confusion about, last year's version. Now we've seen a new version be pulled up, but it came out of the House. What's the difference? So every year we have this process for the National Defense Authorization Act that starts in February with the president making a budget request to Congress. The president, being the leader of the executive branch, has to go and execute the laws, right? So he goes to Congress, who has the power of the purse. They're the ones that control the money, and says, hey, here's what I want to do. Here's how I want to invest, particularly as it pertains to the military forces, armed services, et cetera. So once the president makes that budget request in February, there are a series of sort of another additional 8 or 9 phases that the NDAA goes through in order to get signed into law, and then sort of money and the new guidance can be then actually implemented. As a brief, just high-level note on what some of those steps are, because I think this is actually valuable. It first starts with hearings, where you have DoD officials and subcommittees within both the House Armed Services and Senate Armed Services Committee kind of just hear what the priorities are. What do folks who are actually on the ground think needs to happen? Once you have those hearings, then the subcommittees start drafting up their markups of what they think is important in their specific subcommittee lane. So both in the House and the Senate, there are several subcommittees in the Armed Services Committee. So for example, in the House, you'll have Intelligence and Special Operations as a subcommittee. You'll have Military Personnel as a subcommittee, Strategic Forces. Within the Senate, you have Cybersecurity, Emerging Threats and Capabilities. That Emerging Threats and Capabilities subcommittee in the Senate, as an example, is where we saw Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the former director of AARO, last year come forward for a hearing on the UAP subject. So we start with those hearings, we go to the subcommittee markup. Once it goes to the subcommittee markup, right, then it goes to the full Armed Services Committees in both the House and the Senate for basically confirmation that, hey, we've put everything we want in here to move forward. Now, this is an interesting note. The House already finished their full committee markup for the NDAA for this year on May 22nd. The Senate is going to go through their full committee markup process this coming week on June 12th. So the Senate side is at that full committee markup. They're basically saying, here's what we want to put into the NDAA from our side of the equation. The House has already completed that process. What's happening in the House now is the House is moving into the Rules Committee process. So in the House, they're now going to take their version of the NDAA that came out of the Armed Services Committee, and there's now an opportunity for amendments to be added to that version of the bill. Currently, there are 1,300 amendments that are going to be under consideration by the Rules Committee, who is also meeting this week to, again, decide what gets added. This is where, for folks who've been following the UAP legislative process this year, we've heard that there are 4 proposed amendments coming out of the House for the NDAA. This is the process by which they would have the possibility to be added into the House version. That includes the Safe Airspace for Americans bill. That includes Tim Burchett's UAP Transparency Act. That also includes Representative Garcia's reintroduction of the UAPDA and also increasing access for Aero. Once it goes through that process, both sides of the House consider it. It eventually goes to a conference committee where they take the House version and the Senate version, and they try to figure out a way to mash them both together to get a singular NDAA that's unified across both houses. That conference committee needs to take a vote, and then it goes to a final approval for the full House on full floor vote in the House and a full floor vote in the Senate. So the reason I bring up these stages and sort of the difference between there being sort of a House track and a Senate track that ultimately gets united at the end is we've seen some confusion about Representative Garcia introducing what was effectively a carbon copy version of the Schumer Amendment from last year's NDAA, now in this year's version of the House, which is going to be separate from what we may see come out of the Senate in a revised version of the NDAA. I know some people's eyes might be glazing over, but this process is really important to understand about where we can advocate and make sure that we can actually see these UAP amendments make it through each one of those stages by understanding who has the power to change or dictate what moves forward.
So you just talked about the legislation put forth from Congressman Garcia, and this was really, I think, about 2 weeks ago. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, if it was a carbon copy, essentially, of the Schumer Rounds Amendment, which failed, of course, with, I think, just one provision that was left over. What are your thoughts on it, and why did they put it in, and why do you think it was relatively the same as what was put forth on the Senate side a year ago?
So if you go back and listen to Representative Garcia speak after he left the Intelligence Community Inspector General classified briefing in January on the allegations made by UFO whistleblower David Grusch, one of the things he said was, we're pushing to have more hearings in the Oversight Committee in the House, and that they've already submitted that request, and that they're trying to figure out any other ways in which that they, with their limited seniority and power, can try to move the issue forward. This is where we saw him working with Representative Grothman on the Safe Airspace for Americans bill. And in my view, that if you look at that bill had several co-sponsors, and it wasn't just Representative Garcia taking an individual action, both with the UAPDA that he has introduced in the House, as well as the Aero increased access for Title 50 programs. Both of those were just an action he took independently on his own. And even this week, we saw Representative Burchett confirm to Askapol, Matt Laszlo over at Askapol, that he did not coordinate with Representative Garcia, or Representative Garcia did not reach out to anybody else about that action he was taking to introduce, again, a very similar with minute differences version of last year's UAPDA. I honestly don't understand the strategic decision-making to do so, especially if there was any kind of communication with what was ongoing in the Senate process, as we know that they've been really the leading sort of chamber in terms of really having a strategic vision around what kind of legislation needs to happen and bringing in the expertise to craft that accordingly. So I think this was an act out of not having any feeling like there are any other options to move the conversation forward and just trying to do something. But the concern kind of becomes, if the Senate is going to take into account feedback from why it failed last year, and, we should be on the precipice of seeing if that's going to come out of the Senate here in the next 2 weeks, I don't know that it was the wisest decision to effectively reintroduce a version with known problem areas that were prevented from moving through last year. But one of the benefits is it does allow us to have some discussion, again, with more members who aren't as exposed to the subject earlier on in the House process to prevent this situation where a few small group of chairmen or leadership with power in the House feel like there's no political downside to going after the bill. We have to increase the political cost to not passing UAP-related legislation. So it's awareness in the House earlier in the process is a slight benefit.
Now, the legislation that was put forth by Congressman Tim Burchett, I say time and time again, Congressman, if you're watching the show, you always have an open invitation here. So what is the difference between Congressman Garcia's proposed legislation and Tim Burchett's?
So as you mentioned at the top of the show, the UAP Disclosure Act is a 60-plus page, although Garcia's version is a 40-page, slightly smaller version because parts of the UAPDA last year did pass, so those parts were removed. But it's a very detailed and complex architecture for an ongoing process that creates a sort of new entire entity to deal with the whole disclosure process. Representative Burchett's UAP Transparency Act is a one-page bill that effectively creates a 270-day window, that's time limit for federal agencies and the executive branch to come forward with all of their UAP records, as is based on the definition of the term UAP in the 2022 version of the NDAA. And again, if you look at the old definition of UAP, it is not as specific as the version that is included in the UAPDA, which clearly distinguishes it from drones or secret black budget programs or known means of human manufacture. It is very specific to vehicles that have the 5 observables or the parameters of what has been historically called UFOs, USOs, etc. So the structure of the UAPDA is actually creating the process by which the disclosure will happen. The UAP Transparency Act is basically asking for the federal, the executive agencies to just give up the information with no actual, means of adjudicating that process or, again, having any kind of accountability process built in. Remember, the UAPDA includes subpoena power for the review board, as well as effectively an amnesty program for whistleblowers. So it is quite a strong power, the giving of power to this effectively 9 members civilian board on the UAP Records Review Board.
Excellent. So I have to say I'm a little bit out of practice today. So I switched the show with this little box. And I think at one point you may have seen me do this, and then at one point I brought up Yuan, who is waiting in the wings, and I think he was kind of stretching in the background. So when you have a box with a bajillion buttons, and you're trying to listen to what you're having to say and make sure things are set up, and it's what happens when you're a one-man operation running something out of his office. So so it's we're kind of like, I guess, a cable access show on a large amount of steroids, or in today's case, a birthday cake. So anyway, sorry about that. Of course, this is a very serious subject. I tried to bring some kind of humor into it as much as possible, but anyway, if it looked like I wasn't paying attention and spraying my mouth, looking at the monitor, making sure it was set up, it wasn't that I wasn't paying attention to what you're saying or that it wasn't important. So anyway, apologies to all. Sometimes the Good Trouble show should be more like the Good Trouble amateur hour. Okay, so moving on. So Lester, you and Ronak, and I mentioned both of you have been on the show. So you both founded, you founded, and Lester's your partner in this, the UAP Caucus. So what is the UAP Caucus, and is it related to the UAP Caucus, the one in Congress, headed by Congressman Tim Burchett?
Yeah, so there is a distinction between the Congressional UAP Caucus, which is now a registered caucus within Congress as a sort of a collective member organization. And they focus on, again, the idea behind a caucus is just simply a group of people that have a similar sort of legislative or social or cultural goalpost, and then they use collective action by which to, effectuate the introduction of new legislation, rules, guidance, regulatory towards the end of that shared goalpost. Us as sort of a non-governmental sort of skunkworks advocacy group have been really focusing on, as we all know, this is a space where we haven't really engaged in the political process, beyond a lot of folks who have worked with trying to gather and do the research with former government employees and contractors and trying to put the pieces together, which has been a decades-long process that there are several really, really, powerful and meaningful folks who've done that work. And now there's the intersection of the understanding of these sort of large amounts of indirect evidence that exist, and then now interfacing to actually get proactive legislative goals accomplished, which just requires a different set of initiatives, actions, infrastructure in order to accomplish. And there's never really been UAP or UFO related legislation until 2019, 2020. So it wasn't even something that was possible to think about, you need sort of some kind of political action, advocacy, or network groups doing something, because there was no appetite in Congress to even speak about the subject publicly, let alone put forth legitimate legislation. I think as you saw last year with the introduction of the UAPDA, the level of thought and detail into a very substantive bill, again, that would create a presidentially appointed, Senate confirmed board of 9 people, a structure like that that's only created rarely for really important issues. You have the JFK review boards, you have sort of some 9/11 related ones. You had some ones around HBCUs under the Biden administration. But this is like a real substantive action taken by members in Congress who don't have the political capital to necessarily waste on the subject. So between UAP Caucus and several other entities such as Declassify UAP and others, we have tried to create the infrastructure that you see existing in any other political issue around educational materials, interactive tools for contacting members, and organizing strategically so that we know when we need to communicate with members, what it is that they can do to move the process forward, and why it's important to communicate at particular times. For example, right now, with the Rules Committee considering amendments for the House version of the NDAA, where we do have, UAP-related amendments, we have set up the call tool at uapcaucus.com to include Rules Committee members with a script outlining the details for some of the bills that we just talked about. So if you go to uapcaucus.com/call between today and Wednesday, when the Rule Committee is going to start voting on this, you will be able to contact the members that are in the Rules Committee that will be in charge of that process. So this idea of the rapid response in understanding the political landscape, and then how we can then help create the tools to help people engage with members to raise the awareness such that we can continue the 5-year streak that we currently have going of UAP legislation being included in either the National Defense Authorization Act or the Intelligence Authorization Act, which again, most people don't realize, like that's been something that's already happening. And it's incredible, again, that each year that goes by, there continues to be a doubling down and a doubling down. People don't do it and like, there's nothing there, and then walk away.
So you mentioned earlier Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who was the former director of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, otherwise known as AARO, otherwise known in my view as the Pentagon's in-house BS factory. So So Sean Kirkpatrick leaves and at the end of last year, and he goes on this huge media blitz, this kind of, I would venture to say, sort of a image rehabilitation tour that frankly fell flat on its face. But essentially what he said was that members of Congress were essentially duped by a bunch of UFO fanatics. So these UFO fanatics managed to completely fool members of Senate Armed Services Committee, members of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. These UFO folks managed to fool all the members on House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the House Armed Services Committee of Intelligence. So you've got this former director, I use that word loosely, who seemingly, when he ran Arrow, couldn't even plan his way out of a paper bag, let alone write a historical report whose content would probably have failed an eighth grade science or English report. So this guy is running around spinning this conspiracy theory that all of these members of Congress have been hoodwinked, essentially, and that there's nothing to see here. It's all a bunch of nothing. So in your discussions with people on the Hill, Lester, do they think they've been fooled? Do they think that the wool has been pulled over their eyes? I personally doesn't seem like they do. I think they're way smarter than how Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick is making them out to be.
I mean, you can even see it evidenced by the fact that in the Senate's current proposal for the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2025, they've included a Government Accountability Office review of Arrow and its work, since it's been stood up, to make sure that it's actually working towards its, congressional mandate. So there's sort of two cohorts generally that you can kind of reference within Congress: those who have not had a briefing or have really had the opportunity to understand the current state of the issue, and then you have those that have. And for those that have, without exception, for those that have, at a minimum, again, if you think about it with Congress, they decide where the money goes and how it gets spent. So even if you don't even get into origin and some of the deeper questions related to the subject, there are these black programs that are unaccountable and not being reported to Congress. And they're pissed off about that. I mean, that's it's not, on its face, that can't happen. And then to the extent that then that money being spent on these black programs that are not being reported are also then sort of intersecting with this idea that we're also not reporting to Congress that we're having these consistent incursions over military bases within the U.S. and providing them an accurate intelligence assessment of what that looks like. Again, I'm not trying to create this threat narrative around UAP. I'm strictly talking from the perspective of a member in Congress whose job it is to have oversight of what's happening within the executive branch. And you're telling me you have programs that you're spending money on that you're not telling us, and that we have stuff flying around our military bases that you can't figure out and you're also not telling us, is the entry point by which the concern is usually starting for members in Congress. And then from there, depending on if they're a member of the Gang of Eight or not, right, sort of the seniority, there's the additional level of understanding where you're seeing what we're hearing out of the likes of Schumer and Rounds and Rubio, who have made no qualms about speaking directly to the both non-human intelligence and evidence of biological materials angle, which again is kind of become the third rail around this subject. And so people like to bifurcate it between there's stuff flying around in aviation safety lane, and then the crash retrieval and reverse engineering program lane. What is interesting is the most senior members within the Senate who would have the most access are open to discussing the crash retrieval piece, which should speak for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you with pretty good information that what is it? What are they calling these drones now? Unmanned aerial systems.
Oh, UAS.
Yeah. The Pentagon is fully aware that these are not prosaic drones, that they are UAPs mimicking terrestrial drones. The Pentagon and the CIA knows this, and once again, they are lying, flat out lying to Congress about this. They are well aware of what this is. And folks, despite my sugar high today and continually punching the wrong button on the switcher here, I guarantee you that they are well aware of what is going on. And furthermore, speaking regarding Arrow, members of Congress or staffers that are watching this, you guys know that Arrow right now, all they are doing is feeding you the prosaic stuff, the real drones, just air trash, all of that stuff. So all of you in Congress, all of the staffers, you know what Arrow is currently feeding you, and you're asking yourself, why are they, is this all there is? Is this all there, that they've got on their table? I can tell you, Arrow has anomalous stuff that they have been working on. They have a Tic Tac incident that has censored data that it far, far exceeds the original Tic Tac incident, and they are not giving it to you, members of Congress. They are hiding it. So if it were me, if I were the chair of one of these committees, I would absolutely get the head of Arrow, Tim Phillips, who is a CIA shill, no different than Sean Kirkpatrick. You need to put him in front of your committee, but most importantly, you have to put him under oath, and you need to ask him about why they are not giving all of you in Congress the real things that they are studying. It is truly a travesty. Okay, so moving on here. So in terms of political activities that your organization will be involved with, give us a bit of some of those, and I have a couple of slides from your website. Folks that are watching this, your website information is in the YouTube description, and I have to say, the website, the web presence that you and Ronak have put together with UAP Caucus is unbelievable. It's one of the best I've seen. But here's one of them here. If I hit the right button, okay, good. So walk us through what we're looking at here.
Yeah. So as we've been talking about in this call, right, we've talked about the NDAA process, and at each stage, there's going to be an opportunity for us to contact members that are going to be relevant to moving UAP amendments along. So currently within the House, they are in that rules committee process where they have their version of the NDAA that is, come out of the House Armed Services Committee, and everybody else can then add in, additional amendments and stuff that they want to be included in there that aren't in the Armed Services Committee. Again, there are about 1,300 of those amendments that are going to be up for consideration this week. So on this call tool, we have listed out members of the rules committee that you can contact, especially if you are a constituent in their state. That is the most important thing. If you are a constituent of any of the members, particularly of the rules committee leadership or the majority in the rules committee, which is the Republicans, those are going to be the people that ultimately have the decision-making power. Now, again, I want to remind folks that we don't operate in a vacuum. So there are a lot of political dynamics that are happening right now to be aware of in this process. As an example, the ranking member for the Armed Services Committee put out a statement, I believe 4 or 5 days ago, because there's currently, the challenge you get when you get people being able to add all these amendments to the NDAA is what they sort of call the poison pill, right? So there's a fear that these more radical members in the House are going to try to get things to a floor vote that are well outside, let's say, the norm or the mainstream, like defunding NATO or something that is just going to, again, derail the core process of what's been viewed so far as the bipartisan, version of the existing markup for the bill itself. So understanding that there's already friction and tension about limiting the amount of amendments that are considered because they don't want it to become a circus. The angle by which we speak to the UAP subject to members again, to help them understand the context is really important. I think this is a really big reason why we've seen the likes of Americans for Safe Aerospace really focus on the Safe Aerospace for Americans Act as a aviation safety related issue and something that is much easier for members to digest. And that was originally proposed as a standalone bill. They're now having it be presented as a possible amendment to be added to the NDAA. My view is just on the normalcy of how it would resonate with members who aren't as close to the subject. I imagine that can get a lot of just general support at a high level. I think both the UAP Transparency Act and the UAP PDA in the House, without the contextualizing that we can do as the constituents of these members, they might not really understand the context. This is the reason why it's so important for us to continue to have ongoing relationships as constituents of our own members. They're accessible. It's not like they're not reachable. And you'd be surprised, how quickly you can establish a rapport with a staff or for a member by just being consistent and having a cordial and polite conversation. What you then end up seeing is they start to ask you questions about what are people saying or what do people want, to better understand where to look and how to better position themselves to do something about the subject. So obviously, and I know this is not news for people, but this matters. If you look at any other subject matter where members talk about getting high volumes of calls, they talk about it in their interviews on TV, it then impacts their behavior and the decisions that they make. So it does make a tangible difference. Because we're in an election year, the other angle that we're going to have the ability to do things with is going to be in real life, because people are going to be on the campaign trail. So the opportunity to get folks on the record will be interesting. So there are going to be several ongoing campaigns that are going to be aligned with the current NDAA process, because that's been where we've been able to see the most amount of active UAP legislation be able to get passed, as well as thinking about how we can both increase the understanding of the issue with members within Congress, which is going to be more of the white paper creation, as well as continuing to foster the development in the discovery angle, which there's a whole slew of stuff happening on that side. And I'll just leave it with this. Think about this, right? One of the things that ends up happening is in these classified programs, you have a technical capability that is some amount of step change ahead of the private industry. But private industry ultimately evolves and develops over time. What happens if you're talking about something like remote sensing, when you start to see the private industry get to the level of capability that you see in these classified programs, and then all of a sudden, like the balloon shoot down, the filters, what you are able to see becomes fundamentally different because of a technological change. What if people now are at the place where in the private sector, in the discovery side of this, they are getting to a place where they're deploying remote sensing systems that have a level of granularity that allows you to start to maybe see things more differently. So I think there's that continued tension between how quickly the private industry is getting to a place where the capabilities are going to unlock some understanding or more granularity that is going to make it harder to obfuscate on this issue. So regardless of what happens within government, that private industry progress is going to come and run up on this embargo one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at a Contact in the Desert. I swore I would never go to a UAP convention, but I decided, you know what, I'm going to go see who I meet. Hopefully, get some folks booked for the show. And I met one particular engineer who has developed in his daytime job, he builds radars, and he has developed this home radar that I think is going to cost like $500. And this guy's legit. I've talked to a lot of other people that spoke to his bona fides. Anyway, he's developed this thing, and using AI and filtering out ADS-B information, this radar shows UAPs floating around. And I was just blown away. Now, one of the things that was interesting that he pointed out is that there's some obscure federal law that the government can come and literally pull someone's invention or product off of the market and declare that it cannot be in the public domain due to national security reasons. And this guy is seriously concerned about it because what he's developed is works. I told him, hell, I want one of those things. So I can see what's floating around my neighborhood. So really, the main thing, folks can get engaged and they can support this legislation. And on your website, you have laid out in a very clear, consistent manner the steps that they can use off of your website that will give them the tools to reach out to their congressional representative and support these guys who are taking, as I think you mentioned earlier, enormous political risk in supporting this stuff. So is that what you would recommend to anyone that wants to follow your work and support what you guys are doing?
100%. And I will mention that things will also continue to evolve very quickly once we see the Senate take their action on their version of the NDAA, which again, the Senate has really been the leader in defining the cutting edge of this. We are expecting to see a new version of the UAPDA in the Senate that takes into account the feedback from last year. So you're going to see a much more coordinated and active campaign approach as we see the Senate version become public, so that we can speak to the specifics that are going to exist there. In the current time period, you can already get active because we need to start whipping up momentum within the House. So UAPcaucus.com/call today is active and ready to go for the House Rules Committee. And if you follow at UAP Caucus on Twitter, that's where we'll have updates as those campaigns change, who the targets are and what the message is as we go through that NDAA process. And again, this is what, if you look at any advocacy group for any subject matter, veterans, defense, people who want more budget for, this is what they're all doing all of the time during this season, is understanding where we are in the process and making sure we're pushing the right buttons so that members understand that people are watching. If they know that people are watching, it's harder for them to then sweep it under the rug, because again, we need to increase the political cost for gatekeepers and decrease the political cost for those who support increased transparency on the issue.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So what do you expect? If you have your crystal ball there, what do you think that we can expect in the fall in terms of UAP legislation?
This is always a territory that's very dangerous. I have no sort of special, news to drop or anything related to this. But I think if you just, from a first principles perspective, look at it, we're going to get, the IAA provisions out of the Senate. We're going to get, I feel highly confident we're going to get a new version of the UAPDA out of the Senate. I think there'll be likely some modification related to the language around eminent domain. I don't know that they're going to actually completely remove eminent domain, which is a whole thing we can talk about in terms of approach dealing with the materials. But that is likely going to be the big shot across the bow, is their new version, some changes on eminent domain, maybe some additional language changes. That going into, let's say, September through November, that's going to take up all of the oxygen in the room. There is an open question as to what may or may not come out between now and that time period in terms of any further whistleblowers choosing to come forward, or the deadline for federal agencies to begin to submit their UAP records to the National Archives, which was passed in last year's NDAA, part of the UAPDA, and the release of some of those records during this time period where we'll be entering conference committee for the UAPDA. may or may not spur some interesting questions if there's anything of substance that's really released in that tranche. But I think the challenge here is ultimately going to be this. The committee leadership has not changed since we went through this process last year. That fundamentally hasn't changed. So the dynamics are going to be very much the same that we have to overcome in order to get the UAPDA passed. In my view, I think the way that I've sort of been trying to think about this process is we still have a death by 1,000 cuts approach, the Government Accountability Office review, the increased whistleblower protections and declassification targets in the Intelligence Authorization Act, the potential passage of the UAPDA. Any number of those things are just tightening the noose more. The extension of the ban of funding for UAP programs that are unreported to Congress. They're extending it again for a year as a proposed amendment. These are all ways in which you're just taking oxygen out of the room to enable them to continue to move forward. One of the most important things for this election cycle and going into next year is having UAP be a subject that when we go into the election process for committee leadership in the House Armed Services, Senate Armed Services, and Senate Intel and House Intel committees, it is the utmost paramount thing that whoever is elected into those leadership roles is pro-UAP transparency. We will then have now a 2-year cycle where we'll have the window of opportunity, especially if the UAPDA gets passed, to now move a more aggressive inquiry across those key committees quickly. And if the UAPDA is not passed, those are going to be the positions that are going to dictate whether we can actually move substantive legislation out of the House and Senate moving forward. So I think we have to think about this holistically, both with the legislation and with committee leadership on those two committees in both chambers that are ultimately going to be the congressional gatekeepers to getting some structured approach that isn't just, oh, federal agencies, release all your records and let's hope you do it.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like especially the CIA, which has just for the longest time just given the middle finger to Congress. I mean, a good example is Iran-Contra. So back in the 80s, there's this whole thing where the CIA, in coordination with some other folks, were smuggling arms. I don't remember. I couldn't tell you the whole details of the whole thing, but what I do know is that Congress passed legislation to basically try and put a stop to it. But when they put the legislation forward on the Iran-Contra stuff, they didn't put any sort of enforcement language or teeth into it. So so the CIA says, "Oh, okay, Congress, we won't do that ever again." They look at the bill and there's like, yeah, they can't do anything about it. So of course they keep right on doing it, doing their little dirty deeds. That's one of the things that's important. Go ahead. Sorry.
I do want to mention one thing here, which you bring up, which we missed as the other kind of open question that would impact the legislative pathway is what's the deal with the public hearings, right? We do have the murmurs of public hearings within the Senate led by Senator Gillibrand within the Emerging Threats Subcommittee. And we know because of her recent comments to Matt Laszlo at Askapol that her vision for that hearing is bringing in Aero Director Tim Phillips to bring in video of the things that you've been able to explain so we can give the people something that they can understand that you guys are conducting a scientific process. Whereas in the House, there's been the ongoing rumor mill about the Oversight Committee, which is led by Chairman Comer, who's been focused on the Biden impeachment for the entirety of this cycle and has taken up a lot of the oxygen for other stuff. And then also the COVID Fauci hearings. But in the House Oversight Committee, Representative Burchett has said that they have the witness list from David Grusch, and those are some of the people that they want to bring in. I want to put this message out for anyone who's working on the possibility of public hearings in either chamber. If you go back and watch the anomalous health incidents open hearing in the Senate, I think it might have been the Armed Services Committee, about 3 to 4 weeks ago, Mark Zaid, who is a lawyer and does a lot of sort of legal work for protections of whistleblowers, had some of the best comments that I think really crystallized the reality of the subject matter of AHI for members that were listening to that hearing. And one of the things that they really focused on was the impact to veterans and real people who are now living with the impact of this thing that people are saying is not a real thing. And those personal stories, the human story, the human impact, the human trauma is, you could tell, resonated with members of the Senate who were really doubling down on it. And also speaking to this idea that, so what you're suggesting is that there's a cover-up going on to try to not make this a big deal for any number of reasons. And it was not even conspiratorial. The members on the Senate in that subcommittee that were there was like, people are clearly hiding information in the DOD around this because the amount of victims was so crazy high and the stories were so personal. I think there's an angle to this, again, talking about the human story and the impact, particularly for those in and around the program, could have a real, I think, change for how people view this very abstract and out of the box concept, to ground it in something that people can always get behind, which is supporting those who serve in public service to defend and provide us the lifestyle that we all continue to enjoy. So I think there's some interesting strategic value to take from the anomalous health incidents hearings in the Senate about how you center the story, either around the hostile witnesses or the cooperative witnesses, in either direction.
Yeah, I agree. We had attorney Mark Zaid on our show, I think around a month ago. Olivia Troy, who was Mike Pence's former Homeland Security advisor, she's a personal friend of mine, and she was attacked with AHI or what is more commonly known as Havana syndrome, and it is absolutely just enraging that the CIA has been just blatantly lying to the American public and to Congress about this. And you have, I think, Mark Zaid said, roughly around 2,000 people that have been affected by Havana syndrome or anomalous health incidents, and the Pentagon and the CIA have decided to cover it up. And Mark Zaid, who is a very well-known attorney, he holds a security clearance. He's out of Washington, D.C. He was actually listed as I think one of the top 200 attorneys by Forbes magazine in the United States. I mean, this guy knows his stuff. And part of what he told us in his appearance here is that he has clear classified evidence that the CIA has been lying about anomalous health incidents, and I don't know if he's done it yet, but he is going to provide to the appropriate intelligence community, intelligence committees in Congress. He is going to provide that evidence that directly ties the CIA into this whole cover-up. And the other thing that was interesting about what he said as well is a lot of the reasons why the CIA is wanting to lie about this are many of the exact same reasons they have been lying about the UAP thing for 80-something years. So there's a lot in common there. I don't know if if members of Congress that are approved recipients of this classified information, if Mark Zaid has provided that yet in a skiff on Capitol Hill. But I do know he said it was happening pretty soon. And one of the other things that he pointed out, the classified evidence that he uncovered, was that the CIA knows all about it, but there are sister agencies to the CIA that they hid it from. So you have organizations that are other three-letter agencies that are in the CIA's orbit that they weren't even told about. So it just goes to tell you can't at least trust the leadership of these guys. It's just insane. And finally, what I'll say about that, which touches on what you spoke about, is at the end of the day, all of this doesn't matter if it's UAP or anomalous health incidents, Havana syndrome. This is the Pentagon and the CIA literally giving the finger to American veterans, giving the middle finger and saying "F you" to the men and women that have worn the uniform that allow people like myself to do this podcast and speak freely. And, when you have these guys that just really don't give a damn about the men and women that have worn the uniform, that's not a democracy. That's a banana republic. It's just insane. Anyway, enough of my rant. So
no, I think this is actually really important, though. I think this is really important, though, because what we're sort of getting at is that the problem isn't a UAP problem specifically, it's systemic. And then you can see the behavior manifest in a variety of these sort of bleeding edge frontier areas. So with Havana syndrome, with UAP, and it's sort of how both Daniel Sheehan and Richard Dolan have talked about the national security state, and that apparatus has become so overgrown and so ingrained that in that hearing in the Senate that we were just talking about for Havana syndrome, one of the witnesses made the point that you just made, that the CIA, when they were working with sister agencies on this, the contact at the sister agency was loaned out from the CIA to be able to control the flow of information from within the other sister agency. Again, the strategic way in which we've heard whistleblowers talk about how this stuff is being hidden, we're seeing in other arenas the exact same playbook coming and spilling out in these hearings, like the one with Havana syndrome. So all you have to do, you don't have to create new math here. Just map what we already know is happening with issues like Havana syndrome on this subject. The parallels are almost exact. And again, what it's speaking to is there is a systemic problem where the national security state is basically operating in a way where they don't believe that they need to provide any kind of, they are not responsible to anybody about the decisions that are made, how money is spent when you get into these covert or classified structures. And, fundamentally, you can argue that we need these systems, but at the end of the day, it can't operate with this level of unaccountability.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And folks, so right after Lester answers some audience questions, we're going to say goodbye to Lester for now, and then we'll be bringing on Yuan Fung, who is the executive director of UAP Disclosure Fund. And after that, I've got some thoughts to share about AARO, the interim director of AARO, Tim Phillips. I think I got that right. Tim Phillips, right?
Yes.
I blame it on the birthday cake. And what is going on, and why Senator Kirsten Gillibrand absolutely should not bring Tim Phillips on to the hearing. And I think our listeners are going to want to hear what I have to say about that. Okay, so I don't have my chat moderators here today. That's part of why I'm looking over here and doing that and whatnot. So anyway, so we do have some questions here that I'm going to put forward to you. Let's see. Mads says, looking forward to this episode, Matt, and thank you for your tireless work on UAP NHI disclosure. You're absolutely welcome. This is a team effort. People like Lester Nare, Ronak Patel, and I mean, just a whole host of others. I hate naming names because I inevitably leave someone out, but this is a team effort, not only for those of us that are front facing, such as myself and other people putting out really great content about this, but in people that are Danny Sheehan and all of these other folks that are really doing a lot of work. But there are people at home, you can play a major part, as I say time and time again. And I can tell you from working with these staffers on Capitol Hill, when you call, when you email, it doesn't go into the trash bin. They listen. They log the calls. They log the emails. They pay attention to this stuff so that they have a body of evidence that they can go to their boss and say, look, the constituents are really concerned about this. We need to take this seriously as legislators. Okay, so anyway, I going sort of diverging here. Looking for things for
and
you.
While you're doing that, I'll mention that
yes, please.
That this is a really important note that you talk about. there are several of us who are front facing. There are several people who have been behind the scenes forever who are not front facing, who we are standing on the shoulders of the work of so many people. There's also so many people now who have been doing stuff for a long time or who are just entering the space that are not public facing in any way, shape, or form. They're not on Twitter, they're not on LinkedIn, but they are exceptionally smart, talented, and passionate people that are doing a lot of work, both in the disclosure lane and in the discovery lane and in the understanding lane, which is kind of a new one I'm adding for folks who are coming from the experiencer angle, right? And that they're having a very different conversation than what we're having in the disclosure conversation and the discovery conversation. But in all of those verticals, there are dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of people that are working all of the time to move the momentum in this subject in their varying lanes. So again, just because we don't see things being said by members of Congress or a news article, every mainstream news, the conversations are happening. And the tent of people that are saying, hey, I'm intrigued by this. Hey, I want to understand this more. How can I apply my skill set, my time to pushing this forward? That cohort of people is increasing on a daily basis. And this is just evidenced by the amount of calls and text messages and email threads and just all of these things that I'm getting organically, not from anyone I already know, just from, like, again, college network stuff, places I used to live. It has been really surprising for me to see the amount of people that I had no idea were either curious about the subject or doing work in it, who are, again, now starting to coalesce and collaborate. So I just want to identify that that's stuff that, again, many folks can be doing within their own local communities, especially in these states where we have committee chairpersons that are not supportive of the subject. Them knowing that constituents care and are going to vote with their feet if the issue is not addressed is important.
Excellent. I couldn't agree more. Okay. Firstly, thanks to everyone for the very kind birthday wishes. I just turned 25. Just joking. But I wish I were 25. But anyway, thank you very much, and thank you for some of the super chats that are coming in. Worldwide Phenomena, who's a big supporter of the show, we very much appreciate it. A question to Lester: has there been any attempt by UAP Caucus to encourage Representative Andre Carson, Democrat from Indiana, to visibly join Representative Garcia, Democrat from California, backing Garcia's bills, considering perhaps further Democratic collaboration? Have you heard anything about that?
This is a great question. Shout out to Worldwide Phenomenon, always, I think, supporting the work that tons of people are doing in the space. It's a great question. I do not believe that level of coordination amongst Democrats is currently happening. There's a little bit of the connection between Representative Garcia and Moskowitz, and sort of some connective tissue between their staffers' offices. Obviously, for Representative Carson, many of you may remember, it was, I think, 2 years ago now, in 2022, the first UAP hearing in the House in 50 years. He was sort of one of the people leading that hearing, and has made several public statements about his own personal interest, as well as it being important as a subject matter from a national security perspective. But as far as I'm aware, Carson has not been involved with Moskowitz and Garcia in their engagement with the Republican side of the Congressional UAP Caucus. And again, there are some political dynamics here that make it difficult. The other question is, why hasn't Representative Garcia joined the Congressional UAP Caucus along with Jared Moskowitz, which would, again, encourage, I think, more Democrats to feel comfortable. The challenge is many of the Republican members are very divisive personalities in their positions on any number of cultural and social issues.
Oh, yeah.
So, and Garcia, being from Southern California, is pro-LGBTQ, is very much part of the progressive side of the left. So for him, from a political positioning and capital perspective, it's really hard for him to be associated with some of those other members and maintain credibility as a leader, because I think he's the chairman of either the Progressive Caucus or the LGBTQ Caucus. So I think there are some of these, again, other challenges and political things that make it unfortunately difficult for there to be a unified front in the House, given people's position on other issues. And while this has historically been a nonpartisan or bipartisan situation, generally for those who have been front facing on the House side, in an election season, obviously people return to their bad habits. I will state, though, that on the Senate, that level of partisanship is non-existent, really, as it pertains to the UAP issue.
Got it. Okay. Let's see here. Another question from David Smethurst, good friend of mine, good friend of the show's. David always has really great questions. Has Lester heard anything about how eminent domain will be dealt with if it becomes an issue for the passing of the NDAA? What would they do to mitigate that?
This continues to be a very, very controversial topic. I don't have much more than breadcrumbs. What seems to be the case is the Senate will reintroduce their version, and the sort of conjecture right now is that the eminent domain clause will remain, but it will be narrowed in its focus to remove the exposure of individual citizens from the authority of that eminent domain clause, and it'll be focused more so on these either corporate or larger entities that I think is really the fundamental intent of the bill. But even if it were to come out and it were the same version of the eminent domain clause or a slightly modified version that was more narrowly scoped to deal with the Brandon Fugel, Travis Taylor argument, which is, I'm just a regular Joe. Why does the government have the right over my material as just someone who didn't get hundreds of millions of dollars to reverse engineer it? Which I don't think it's a reason to not pass the NDAA, but like, I understand philosophically where they're trying to come from. I think there's going to be challenges regardless, because there's just a foundational political, like for conservatives who are limited government focused, eminent domain is already just like a poison pill conceptually, let alone it being related to UAP. I do think what you will see is, as now we are going to get through this cycle, there are people beginning to think through other legislative approaches to deal with the materials and the IP and legal and rights and all of that kind of derivative second and third order issues that are related to it. Whether you think about a regulatory approach, whether you sort of think about an amnesty program approach. So I think although this cycle, it's going to be largely, probably mostly structurally the same with some tweaks, as Mike Rounds told Matt Laszlo at Ask a Poll a couple of weeks back. We are seeing other approaches also begin to get into the early ideation and drafting phase that will start to be spread around as the fallback to, okay, now going into the 119th Congress, potentially new committee leadership, and learning that, we can't get this passed with this structure, particularly related to eminent domain. I think you'll start to see at that point some of these alternative approaches begin to take hold in the conversation. But I think for the time being, the belief is that the UAPDA structure as is the best path forward for the Karl Nell style controlled disclosure approach.
Got it. Okay. So Lester, how can folks support you, find you on the web, X, all that good stuff, and how can they support the good work that you and Ronak are doing at UAP Disclosure? Sorry, I'm totally out of it today. My gosh,
it's
UAP Caucus.
This should have been a weekend off. You're not taking the time off that you need.
I had 2 weeks off. I think that's my problem. Man, I have very bad ADD, by the way, and I take Adderall for that. So I think the Adderall and the cake just boom put me off. Anyway, go on ahead. Sorry about that.
So I think the number one thing that people can do is go to uapcaucus.com/call. Look at the members on the Rules Committee and call them to support UAP amendments in the House. And then the thing that you can do in the next 2, 3, 4, and 6 weeks is continue to go to that same link and keep updated on where we are in the process to push that momentum. The other thing people can do is find one of our white papers, find one of our explainer guides. That's an entry point that you enjoy, and talk to at least one person a week for the entirety of this legislative season about whatever angle of the issue that you really care about that you've never talked about the subject to before with. Those are the two things that you can do to support the work that we do. And you can follow us at UAP Caucus on Twitter and Instagram. We are also going to be having a YouTube channel coming out soon as we begin to ramp up sort of more of our media efforts and interviews and really trying to push to get the congressional conversation consistently around this subject matter. So please keep an eye out for that. And when it comes out, give us that follow. And just for me personally, at Lester, Nare on all of the platforms. Matt, I really appreciate the work that you do, my friend. I'm excited to listen to what Yuan has to talk about as well. Again, as many people know, we're all working together to try to figure out how can we unify all of the resources and skill sets we have to be the most effective. And I'm excited for the entry of the UAP Disclosure Fund and the work that will eventually be happening there as well. So thank you so much as always, Matt.
You're very welcome. And hey, apparently we do not live too far away from each other. So, yes. If you need a guest on your upcoming show, I'm looking for work. So actually I do this for free. So I would gladly come on your show to support you any day of the week. And, as I always say, people, when I was at the Contact in the Desert event, people were saying, this UAP Disclosure Fund, is this competition to, New Paradigm Institute or UAP Caucus and whatnot? And I said, absolutely not. Much in the same way that the issue of global warming has many organizations that are lobbying Congress, doing really good work. It's not like it's just one outfit trying to affect change on the global warming issue. It's multiple people. This topic is no different. We need more shows like this, more organizations such as what you're doing, what Danny Sheehan is doing with MPI, what we are doing with UAP Disclosure Fund. The more people that are treating this in a serious, non-sensationalized way, it will become politically impossible for people in Washington to ignore, because it is so evident that this is an important issue to the American public, despite what they may say, and despite the fact that you've got a mainstream media that is just the lamestream media. It's just they're completely not doing their journalistic duty to Americans. But anyway, Lester, thank you very much. Sorry for my little technical snubs.
No.
Hopefully
I have my board right here too. I have my I have my same setup and so I understand. I have, twinkle thumbs or whatever. So I totally, I know how it goes.
It's absolutely. Okay, Lester, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Have a great day, my friend.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, folks. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, as I mentioned, I'm also ADD. Thank God I take Adderall for it. It has helped my life immensely, but I have very little sugar. And when I had the birthday cake today, I guess it didn't, it just kind of put my amplifier at level 11. So anyway, we always still try and have fun here. Okay, so moving on. So before we bring on our next guest, let's look at some of the congressional testimony from whistleblower David Grusch in front of the House Oversight Committee in 2023.
The UAP Task Force Director asked me to identify all special access programs and controlled access programs, also known as SAPs and CAPs, we needed to satisfy our congressionally mandated mission, and we were direct report at the time to the DepSecDef. At the time, due to my extensive executive level intelligence support duties, I was cleared to literally all relevant compartments and in a position of extreme trust, both in my military and civilian capacities. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it. I made the decision, based on the data I collected, to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general. and in effect becoming a whistleblower.
Thank you. My last question, and sometimes I know that you have also said some of these answers in the past, but we're trying to get them on the public record as well, which is really important. Mr. Grusch, finally, do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the firsthand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the inspector.
Okay. You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
Wow, just amazing. Even today when I go back and I watch this, and of course I've watched it dozens of times, you have to stop and think to yourself, here is an individual that has held some of the nation's highest security clearances with the highest tickets, security tickets, dealing with presidential level classified material. This isn't just some guy off the street telling Congress that. So yeah, you just got to keep that in mind when you hear the debunkers and whatnot. Just don't get me started. Anyway, our next guest has worked for over 20 years as a creative director and consultant for campaign politics and advocacy. Leveraging his political expertise and talent, he is now the executive director for the political nonprofit UAP Disclosure Fund. Please welcome Yuan Fung. Yuan, how are you, sir?
Hi, Matt.
Nice.
I'm out and ready to go.
Excellent. Nice to see you. So,
I just want to say real quick, it's truly an honor to be on your show.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan of the work you do here, and that was a great segment with Lester. He and Ronak are doing an amazing job with their work on UAP Caucus, and as you guys heard, his understanding of the mechanics of how everything is going to unfold in Congress is incredible. And we look forward to working together with UAP Caucus because, the work they're doing to map it all out, we can use, everybody who's involved in advocacy can use to help us going forward. So, great segment.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us. Now, Yuan, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. This is your first time, of course. And before we get into the UAP Disclosure Fund, let's talk about you. I was at Contact in the Desert, as I said, and I heard a lot of people say, who is this guy Yuan Fung? He's like this mystery guy. So tell us a bit about yourself and how you became interested in UAP.
I kind of like that moniker, mystery guy.
Yeah, I do too.
I'll tell everybody a little bit about myself, of course. I've spent over 20 years working in campaign politics and issue advocacy as a consultant and creative director. I've worked on behalf of congressional, gubernatorial, Senate, and presidential campaigns. Highlights including the late Senator Harry Reid, who is so important to our topic, and both of Obama's presidential campaigns. I've also done work for causes like consumer safety, the environment, and clean energy. So I'm very excited to bring my skill set to bear on the UAP issue. And in terms of how I became interested in UAP, I like to say that I'm part of the wave of 2017. The now famous New York Times article and Politico article about the Pentagon's UAP program and the gun camera videos that were released at that time. When I saw those videos, that's when I had a light bulb moment and I knew I needed to learn more. So I've spent the past several years researching the topic. And I really believe, after all the research I've done, that the data points to the fact that we're dealing with a non-human intelligence. And I also have no reason to doubt whistleblower David Grusch, Karl Nell, and others who are in positions to know when they state that we are dealing with a non-human intelligence or an NHI. But like everybody else, I want to see the evidence, right? So that's exactly what motivates me to help in the fight for the truth and and disclosure moving forward.
Now, when I have new guests on our show, I often ask, have they seen a UAP, UFO? Have you ever seen anything in your life?
I personally have not witnessed anything significant, but I have, my grandfather had a very significant encounter in 1948 that I can share. My grandfather was a prominent Lincoln historian and taught as a professor at Lincoln Memorial University in Harrogate, Tennessee, around that era. And so in 1948, he and the president of the university were leaving from a meeting that was late in the evening, and they were driving home, and on the highway, they came across a large metallic disc-shaped craft in the middle of the highway with blinking lights on it, and they had to stop. And my grandfather said that they sat there for what felt like 10 minutes looking at it, and then it shot into the sky instantly and disappeared. And they looked at each other and said to each other, "Let's never tell anybody about this." And so it wasn't until my grandfather was later in life, in his 70s, I think, when he told our family. So, you know, as people who follow the topic know, I mean, Harrogate, Tennessee is just a few miles down the road from Oak Ridge, right? So in 1948. So, I mean, it's all fits with the data in terms of when you might see something like that. So that story is a linchpin for my belief that the phenomenon is real.
It absolutely is real. I've seen it myself multiple times, and actually got a call from my mom, my elderly mother, who shared with me a story that she had never told anyone related to UAP, and I think it explained a lot of the reason of why I'm here and why I feel I should be doing this. So moving on. So the UAP Disclosure Fund, we launched that. What was it, last weekend? And here is our launch video that I would like to play before we start digging in deeper.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
Well, if there's a good thing, it's rotating.
Last night's 60 Minutes story on UFO sightings by U.S. Navy pilots is causing a big reaction today.
There's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are.
My hope is that we will use the U.S. intelligence community to solve this mystery once and for all, to find out where are they coming from, who's behind them, what is the agenda. We have the means and the capability to do that if we set our minds to it as a nation.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
The American public has a right to learn about technologies of unknown origins, non-human intelligence, and unexplainable phenomena.
We're going to uncover the cover-up, and I hope this is just the beginning of many more hearings and more people coming forward about this.
Have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself of non-human origin craft?
Yes, I personally interviewed those individuals.
The best science, isn't it, is when you go against the grain.
Yeah. Eventually, the anomalies and the things that don't fit the picture add up to the point where you can't ignore it anymore. And so that's what has just recently happened. We're watching a Kuhnian moment.
This is huge, isn't it? We're at a huge moment in human history right now.
It's essential we keep working on our proposal to create an independent presidentially appointed review board that can oversee UAP classified records and create a system for releasing them where appropriate to the public.
UFOs, unidentified flying objects, are real.
Bill, I think we're beyond that already. The government has already stated for the record that they're real. I'm not telling you that. The United States government is telling you that.
Amazing. I mean, wrong button there. Man, I am having a hell of a day. Watching that video, I think it's easy for all of us to get discouraged, especially with what happened with the Schumer Amendment last year. But what I love about this video from UAP Disclosure Fund is it truly encapsulates the fact that we have come an incredibly long way, almost in an unimaginable amount of progress has been made. And the other thing that I think makes crystal clear, absolutely crystal clear, in complete opposite of what you hear folks like Dr. Stern Kirkpatrick and these debunkers say, is these are national security officials. These are members of Congress that sit on armed services committees, on intelligence committees, members of Congress that hold the tickets, the security clearances needed to view the classified product related to UAP. They know we are not talking about something from Russia or China. They know full well these. I mean, you can't emphasize that enough. So, thank you. I love that ad, and it is inspiring, and I hope everyone at home, watching that, is inspired as much as I am every time I see it. Now, you're the executive director of the UAP Disclosure Fund. How did this nonprofit come about, and what is its mission?
Yeah, for me, it was last year, right? 2023. So much happened. David Grusch coming forward about almost a year ago right now. And so through the summer, with the hearing in Congress and the UAP Disclosure Act introduced by Schumer, it became clear that the UAP issue was entering the political realm. And at that time, there really weren't any groups operating squarely in that realm. And I've, as somebody who's followed the topic for several years now closely, I saw the desire out there in the public for people to want to have something to rally behind, a way to get organized. And so for me, that was the genesis of the idea of starting something like this. And also, with whistleblowers in the wings, we were hoping they would come out sooner. The idea of having some sort of fund or nonprofit that could help them was a part of it. So, since 2017, I've admired the work of Lue Elizondo. I consider him a patriot and a hero. And so I approached Lue with the idea of forming a group that would take political action to fight for transparency and protect whistleblowers. And so it's that collaboration that started and that resulted now in the UAP Disclosure Fund.
Now, what are some of the... please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to say our core mission is to restore congressional oversight, ensure that UAP are addressed as a national security issue, and to, in general, just fight for more transparency so that scientists can get data, the public can learn the truth. And, we're going to work directly with Congress, as many of our board members have already been doing. We're going to help everybody to work to build a grassroots political movement. And we also want to raise public awareness about the UAP issue. I would love to quadruple the number of Americans who are aware of what's happening and paying attention to it.
Absolutely. Now, what are some of the first political actions that the UAP Disclosure Fund is going to be taking?
Sure. We feel like the best chance for legislative progress this year is going to be the 2025 National Defense Authorization Act, as you and Lester talked in detail about. So our first action that we came out of the gate with is that we have a petition on our website at uapdisclosurefund.org. And this petition is to encourage Senator Schumer and Rounds and the other senators who co-sponsored last year's legislation to support them and encourage them to support new legislation being added this year to the NDAA. And, we want to hold them to their pledge. So we invite everybody to sign it. And in a few days, as they're getting going with the first markup meetings, we're right as that's about to happen, we're going to deliver the petition directly to the offices of the senators. And so, yeah, please sign the petition, share it on social media. And we also would like people to post on social media in support of legislation in the 2025 NDAA, especially those of you watching who have larger followings.
And this is not, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I was
please.
going to say I have one more action that I want to kick off because it's an idea that, came to me recently. As Lester had mentioned, we want to have people start to go to events in person leading up to this election, whether it's a town hall meeting or it's a candidate's campaign rally. Go to an event in your area where somebody running for office is speaking and holding an event. And whether it's in the Q&A session, what they might hold in a town hall, or it's a one-on-one when you can speak to them directly, ask these candidates, do you support greater transparency of UAP records and data? And do you consider ongoing incursions by UAP into secured airspace over sensitive U.S. installations to be a national security issue? Any reasonable candidate, even if they're not informed on the topic, is going to say yes. And I think by doing this across the country, we'll start to plant the seeds in candidates' minds that the UAP issue is one that the public is asking about and taking seriously.
Absolutely. And this is not something, so you go to the website and folks watching at home, if you go to the YouTube description, you will see the link for UAPDF. This is not something you have to donate or make a donation in order to sign the petition, correct?
Correct. Right. We have a donate button because we're a nonprofit, and people are wondering, I know, because we're called UAP Disclosure Fund, is this some sort of investment fund? But no, it's a nonprofit. All of our board members and advisors are volunteers, and every dollar of every donation goes directly into funding our core mission. But to sign the petition and just put your name on it, no donation required. So please do.
And I think too that it is important. I know even just speaking for myself, it's easy to get frustrated with the progress and the setbacks and just kind of the rate of progress. But I would say, and I'm just curious if you have thoughts on this, Senator Chuck Schumer and Mike Rounds, they are really sticking their neck out doing this. And I think it is incumbent on all of us that care about this issue that we, when people reach out to those offices, it shouldn't be, hey, you guys need to be doing more or whatnot. These guys are doing a lot. And I can say with certainty, the staffers working for Senator Schumer and for Senator Rounds, what they would love to know is that the public appreciates what they are doing, and words of encouragement, I think, will go a long way to helping our cause and just encouraging these folks in Washington at Senator Rounds, Schumer, and others that are really sticking their neck out. It will give them encouragement and let them know what they're doing, the thing that all of us want them to do. Would you agree?
Absolutely, I think that's a great point, Matt. What they have done is an amazing step forward, and with their pledge to continue work on UAP transparency, we need to support them every step of the way. I feel like last year when they made this big step forward, we were all watching in the wings thinking, wow, this is amazing. The Senate is taking it seriously. And I feel like last year there wasn't a political action supporting them. We all thought it might just sort of sail through and maybe people wouldn't notice and we would get this amazing UAP transparency. But we learned at the last minute that there are going to be interests and stakeholders who want to oppose, UAP transparency. So as Lester pointed out earlier, I think we need to make our support known, and then moving forward, we're going to be actively campaigning on making sure that lawmakers who thought that they could just get away with opposing UAP transparency with no political price to pay are going to have some sort of political price to pay.
Yeah, I think so. I think especially Congressman Mike Turner, it is really important that they understand the consequences. Now, you have quite a powerhouse as part of your board of directors, and I've got a slide here if you want to maybe walk through some of the folks that are part of this.
Sure. It makes me laugh because somebody recently told me that we'd managed to assemble the Avengers with this board.
For sure.
So, we have on our main board of directors, we have former head of the Pentagon's UAP program known as ATIP, Lue Elizondo, Stanford professor, world-renowned scientist, and founder of the Soul Foundation, Dr. Garry Nolan, and former UAP Task Force Director, Aerospace Executive, and retired Army Colonel Karl Nell. And on our advisory board so far, we have former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, Christopher Mellon, former senior staff member of the Senate Armed Services Committee for many years, Kirk McConnel. And we are excited that you, Matt, have agreed to join the effort as our Director of Strategy. And, rounding it out, we have our CFO, Leslie Duckworth. She's a colleague of mine, and she's an experienced project manager and budget manager.
Awesome. And I am absolutely honored to have been working with you, putting this whole thing together and to continue working with you. It is truly an honor to be part of this. And I also want to just take a little just kind of sidebar here. Just to be clear, my work as Director of Strategy for UAPDF has nothing to do with the Good Trouble Show. They are two totally separate things. It's it's like I've got a second job, so to speak. So hopefully my talents will be of use to UAPDF, and so I just wanted to put that out there. And we have some quotes here from Lue Elizondo, which I think is really prescient. So Lue says, "And never has there been a time in our human history where American politics and even the world agree that the time is right for full UAP transparency and disclosure. While there remain valid reasons to keep certain technologies and advancements within the classified world, the fact that humanity is not alone in an unalienable truth that this generation now faces. Rather than decide and decide and fight one another, let's hold our hands, brother to brother, sister to sister, friend to friend. For it is how we choose to face this new reality may dictate how it chooses to face us." And wow. And then here's one from former Assistant Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, Christopher Mellon. Christopher says here, "Transparency and openness are consistent with national security. We hope the public will support our efforts to bring transparency to the UAP issue." And, it was interesting. At the Contact in the Desert thing, I had the honor of meeting Chris Bledsoe, who, as everyone knows, is a long-term experiencer, continues to run into these things. And he made an interesting comment, and he said the phenomenon is reflective. So if you come at it with bad intentions, what it reflects back is not going to be good. If you come at it from a positive place and love and all of that, then it's going to reflect that back. So I think what Lue said there is really on point. So a question that a lot of people have asked, and it's mainly the sort of naysayers, the professional debunkers. Do you think that the advisory board or the board will be compensated down the road financially?
Like I said before, absolutely not. We're a nonprofit organization, and every dollar that we would receive as a donation goes directly into funding our core mission, and no advisors or board members will receive a penny.
Okay, and how involved are the members of the board and the advisory board as far as the day-to-day operations? Like, give us a window into how UAPDF operates.
Sure. We're just up and running, so our day-to-day operations are just beginning. I would say that overall, our board will be involved with strategic planning and vision for the work that we're going to do moving forward. And some of them are going to be working every day towards disclosure, as they already have been, and our mission and goals.
Got it. Okay. And now I understand as well that Lue Elizondo has actually been very active on the Hill, taking meetings with members of Congress and their staffers. Can you give us any sort of inside scoop as to what's going on there?
Well, Lue, I can tell you, is on the phone with members of Congress pretty much every day, and he's in D.C. quite frequently. So, one of the initiatives that the UAP Disclosure Fund is going to embark upon is taking the effort that he's been doing almost single-handedly, he and others, a few others, over these last several years, and we want to scale it up. We want to provide, more boots on the ground and just scale up the effort so that when we, when relationships are established with members of Congress, that, we can follow up with, information, briefing papers like perhaps that the UAP Caucus has created. And so, yeah, that's one of our goals. But as far as like what I might be able to share, I can tell you that in addition to the legislation that we're seeing come public, that's going to be hopefully added to the NDAA, there are actions going on behind the scenes that could have a huge positive impact on progress being made. I can't speak to specifics yet, but I think that will become very clear in the coming months. And the UAP Disclosure Fund will be extremely involved in that process as well.
Absolutely. And I've said time and time again on the show, it's not what's going on above the water that is in full visibility to everyone. It's what's going on below that is kind of out of sight and in a way out of mind. But I absolutely concur. There is a lot happening. It is something to be, to be excited about. And it's also something that should energize everyone here that is watching the show to make the calls. And we'll talk a little bit about your campaign. Please.
Yeah. And Matt, one thing I'd like to add too, is I think that one of the unique things about the UAP Disclosure Fund and the team we've put together, is that these are, people who have been working either within government or with government for many years. So they've developed networks and relationships that are crucial to making progress moving forward. And, some of them have security clearances, and that allows them to have meetings with lawmakers where they can discuss sensitive UAP information in a way that people without security clearances can't. So it's a very crucial, part of what makes this project unique is we can work directly with lawmakers. We can work from the inside as well as the grassroots movement that we're building from the outside.
Absolutely. I think that is definitely one of the things that sets UAPDF apart. And again, all of these organizations, they have various things that they're bringing to the table. So you have political advocacy groups, as I mentioned, such as UAP Caucus with Lester that was just on, and Ronak Patel. And then also we have Danny Sheehan's New Paradigm Institute. They are doing a really, really great work. Danny he's been on the show twice, and man, you want to talk about a living legend. He is amazing. So my question is, and it is a question that I heard a lot, is where does the UAP Disclosure Fund fit in terms of with these other organizations, and do you view them as competition as far as what you're wanting to do?
Yeah, I know that's a question a lot of people are wondering. We feel like we're not in competition with anybody. As you mentioned earlier, when you have an issue, a social issue, a governmental issue that becomes significant, there's no shortage of work to be done and the need for groups and people to advocate. So I feel like, we're in the early stages of that in this UAP space. And so far, everybody that's coming online is tackling different things. I mean, we've had conversations with Danny and New Paradigm Institute, and, we plan on working together moving forward and figuring out ways that we can unify our messaging, ways that we can work together. And, with Declassify UAP and UAP Caucus, we've been in talks with them as well. And we look forward to working with, other organizations like Americans for Safe Aerospace and the Soul Foundation. One of the reasons, I think I can speak for Garry Nolan right now, one of the reasons that he signed on to this UAP Disclosure Fund is because, while the Soul Foundation is addressing the academic think tank level approach to the UAP topic, and they're going to be, supporting research, supporting white papers. The UAP Disclosure Fund is the political boots on the ground side of things. So, I know he's excited about what we can do with that moving forward. That will be a perfect complement to what Soul Foundation is doing.
Absolutely. Now, at the top of the show, I played the clip of Senators Schumer and Mike Rounds following the gutting of the UAP Disclosure Act, their colloquy on the Senate floor. What should our audience take away from that? Even though it was almost a year ago, if not a little bit more, what should the takeaway be for people that watched that video?
I think it was a truly remarkable moment. Schumer, in the clip that we played, Schumer stated that there's credible evidence of a cover-up. Rounds talked about recovered materials of unknown origin and biologics. And, they both pledged to keep working towards UAP transparency. So, again, that's why we need to support their continued efforts and make sure that they understand the public demands the truth.
Now, one of the things I think probably everyone that has really been tracking this is they want to know, will there really be a Schumer 2.0? And then the other question, as you mentioned, we have Colonel Karl Nell, who is on the board of directors. Are any of the board involved in the writing of possible Schumer 2.0 legislation? And if so, who are they?
Right. I can speak to the fact that as the UAP Disclosure Fund, we're advocating for the legislation to be added to the NDAA. I can't speak to any specifics about who's crafting or how it's being created, but we're hopeful that as it's considered in the next few days, that it will be added. And then we can just simply move forward with, I think, spending the rest of the year laser focused on getting it passed. Further, call campaigns, letter campaigns, whatever we can do. We're gonna figure out ways to bring political action to bear here all the way through the end of the year. Because for the folks who don't know, the NDAA is usually voted on in December. And
do you think that there will be, what do you think if, and again, this is not having any sort of inside track, but if you were to guess, what would you predict would be different about a Schumer 2.0 versus the Schumer version 1 that was defeated last year?
Yeah, as you and Lester discussed, I think I think there would be modifications to any aspects that proved problematic or raised by people who opposed it. One of the things that we're, in our petition, we're advocating for is increased whistleblower protections. So we hope that that's added as well. One of the reasons I believe that we have not seen more whistleblowers come forward since David Grusch is due to the fact that the current whistleblower protections, which are designed for anybody within our government who sees fraud and abuse within a government program to come forward, they're not tailored to this sort of specific and unique situation that we're in with UAP whistleblowers, where it appears there's been, programs hidden from Congress illegally, essentially. And so the stakes are much higher. And so what we're advocating for is a set of protections that will be comprehensive, more proactive than the current basic protections, and that can be applied directly to UAP whistleblowers. And that will also, making them specifically about UAP whistleblowers will make them easier to pass, because if it's just whistleblowers in general, that raises a lot of issues for the government in general. So that's our hope.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've said time and time again, everyone that's watching at home should call their elected representatives and demand UAP transparency. And as I'm just a kind of talk show host, but as someone that has worked, that has really been a veteran of campaign politics, such as yourself, does that sort of thing truly have an impact?
Absolutely. It's never a wasted it's never wasted time to pick up the phone and call or to write a letter. Writing a letter directly to a representative is very impactful. We retweeted on our UAP Disclosure Fund Twitter account or X account a few days ago a letter that somebody received from Senator Welch of Vermont. They had written Senator Welch to ask if they were taking UAP issues seriously, and they got a letter that was signed back from Senator Welch, who's not somebody who's been on our radar. And he said he was monitoring facts closely and paying attention to it. So calling and letter writing are always a good thing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, one of the things, I think it's an easy out for some lawmakers that really aren't sort of tracking this or paying attention to it is some of them will probably tell you, well, people don't care. But the fact of the matter is there are lots of people, not only in America, but just worldwide. They understand that this is a significant national security issue. It, as you mentioned, is a significant congressional oversight issue, this sort of obfuscation that has happened for literally decades by the Pentagon and the intelligence community. And frankly, I think people are tired of it. They know it's real. They know that they are being lied to by the government. They're doing a horrible job at it. I think people are fed up and they're like, come on, guys, we're not stupid. So, so I would love to get to some audience questions if you don't mind. Now, some of them are not specific about UAP Disclosure Fund, but I know with you being new on the scene, a lot of people want to know what your insight and thoughts are on things. So here's one from David Smethurst, again, friend of the show. Why does the panel think, or you and I, Lester's no longer here, why do you think that Lue Elizondo called his book imminent? Does he mean imminent disclosure, imminent threat, or imminent event, or something else? I have no idea. So any thoughts on that?
I would say that Lue Elizondo's book and the contents of it are almost as well guarded a secret as the crash retrieval programs we're trying to get to the bottom of. Yeah. So just like everybody else, I am very much looking forward to the release of the book so I can learn more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel exactly the same way. Paranormal Pixie Laura asks, in regards to the safe aerospace issue, have there been any actual collisions or crashes of planes documented that you're aware of? I am not, but I don't know, maybe you've heard something I haven't.
Well, I can't recall the specific events and dates, but in reading the voluminous works of folks like Richard Dolan, there have been incidents over the decades where there have been allegedly fighter jets who have been scrambled to intercept UAP who have been shot down from offensive reaction from the UAP. But nothing in the recent past, and certainly I think, nothing that I'm aware of, in the United States. I think the most visible incident recently were the spy balloon, the spy balloon that came over, and then the unknown objects that were shot down that still have not been explained to this day. But one of the aspects about what we're going to message on and what we're working on is that there's an ongoing issue right now with objects in the sky over our sensitive facilities, right? Matt, you did a great show a few weeks ago about the witness who saw orbs the size of cars coming over Langley Air Force Base back in December. And, the Pentagon doesn't have great answers. And it's an area where lawmakers, they have to address this, right? Whether they're more comfortable calling these drones right now, so be it. Let's let them call them drones. They still need to be addressed so that we can figure out what's going on. And we whether the origin is in fact human and very terrestrial, or it's something else, we need to figure it out. But either way, it's a big problem. So we're going to, keep people aware of that.
Absolutely. It is a big problem. Wildcat at Home, thank you so much for the super chat, wants to know what is being done about Mike Turner, Mike Rogers, who killed the previous amendment. That's an excellent question.
Yeah. I think, as we head into the fall election, and now that we're up and running as the UAP Disclosure Fund, we're definitely going to take a look at how we can apply pressure to folks like Mike Rogers and Mike Turner, who at the last minute opposed the UAP Disclosure Act last year. And we want to put pressure on them. We want there to be a political price of some sort for them to oppose it if they want to do that this time. And, I think it's a little bit unclear of how much they're willing, how much political capital they're willing to spend on opposing the next set of legislation. But we will find out. And, part of discouraging them from doing that again is also supporting more vocally this year all of the lawmakers who are, pushing for the UAP transparency even more than we did last year.
Okay, let's see here. Another good one. We're going to put you on the spot a little bit here from Heiser Soze. Thank you for watching. Was there anyone asked to be part of the UAP Disclosure Fund that chose not to join? And if so, did they give a reason why?
I'll speak to this. I'll speak to the fact that it's been an amazing journey for me as somebody who embarked on trying to put together a project like this that could operate in the political space and advocate for UAP transparency. And along the way, I've met a lot of great people from the community, a lot of people who've been working in the field for years. And I was fortunate enough to be able to get meetings with, these top figures who have now agreed to sign on. All along the way, I never encountered anybody who said, I think this is a waste of time. I don't think this is a good idea. We're looking in the future to add more people to most likely our advisory board. So stay tuned. We're not finished. We're building a movement here. And so, really the story is just beginning.
Absolutely. Let's see here. Scoos Mastiffs, I'm probably mispronouncing that. Question, do you think we will succeed with disclosure and this political campaign? And if so, do you have a rough timeline as far as when we can expect things to change?
I do think that we are past the point of no return. I think that what we're seeing, and that's one of the reasons why with the video we created, we wanted to create something that would inspire people and remind people just how far we've come in the last few years. The last 6 months have felt like retrograde, and there's been not a lot of movement, not a lot happening, and but moving forward, the fact that we have all these lawmakers interested in UAP transparency and the fact that we're just growing the number of people in public who are not going to give this up or not going to go away, it means to me that we are on a course for disclosure. But how long, I don't know. I would love it if it was sooner rather than later. But sure. I think, everything in Congress can take time. And if you actually compare how much progress has been made in the last few years on the UAP issue coming out of nowhere, it's actually quite remarkable how quickly it's moved. And I think that speaks to the credibility and the level of importance of the allegations that people like David Grusch and Lue Elizondo and Christopher Mellon have brought forward in the last few years to Congress. So, I think it's buckle up, we rally together, we fight together, and we're going to demand the truth.
Absolutely. From Aaron Goldbach, and this is something I don't know how to answer this one, and you may not either, but we'll see. How do you feel about Senator Rogers' analysis of Las Vegas alien video? You know what? I'm going to skip past that. I usually have somebody that vets all of these, but no one was available today, so I'm kind of scrolling through stuff here. Actually, I have a question for you. I know what my experience has been, but I said earlier, sort of people refer to you as sort of a man of mystery, not knowing much about you. Again, this is kind of one of your first appearances in public on the UAP topic, and thank you so much for joining us. I would say another man of mystery, perhaps an international man of mystery, would be Colonel Karl Nell. I have to say, my conversations with him, man, this guy is on another level of genius, unbelievable. And just the things that he has done in service to his country are unbelievable. What is Karl Nell like? Colonel Nell, what does he like to work with?
So far I've really enjoyed working with Karl. He is extremely intelligent. His resume is astounding. And it's just incredible that he's putting attention now on disclosure, because to have somebody with his knowledge, his awareness, his experience, putting his time into this, it's an incredible resource, and I'm honored to be working with him. So I look forward to what we can do together.
Absolutely. So how can viewers at home support the UAP Disclosure Fund and play their part in moving the ball forward?
Sure. I mean, right now we're focused on our first call to action, which is the petition. So, we've gotten, the response has been amazing. We've gotten almost 5,000 signatures. Our goal is 10,000 over the next few days. So I'm confident that if everybody who's watching today and will watch this show over the next couple of days signs the petition and hopefully shares it with their friends, I think we can get there. And we're going to deliver it directly to the offices of the senators, by Wednesday. So that's our effort. When you sign the petition, you get on our mailing list. So we are going to be announcing our forthcoming campaigns and initiatives as well over the coming weeks and months that, like I said, bring us with laser focus to the end of the year on trying to get legislation passed this year.
And the website that people can find you at, or find UAPDF at.
Yeah, UAPDisclosurefund.org.
Excellent. And of course, on Twitter, you're at UAPDF. We'll put the links in the YouTube descriptions. Well, Yuan, it's a pleasure having you on. I promise I wasn't trying to punk you when I hit the wrong button on my switcher. There are all these buttons, and one is had Lester. He's off now. This one has you. This one has me and Lester, but he's not on. I think I hit that a couple of times, and then I hit the one where I think you were like looking off and at the birds or something like that. So I promise I wasn't trying to punk you. Like I said, this is a one-man operation. Someone had said, "Man, you must have a really big staff." No, you're looking at it. This is it. So you're doing really serious work. As I said, I'm trying to kind of have as much fun with this as possible. We all have to have a sense of humor in life. But at the end of the day, this is a very serious topic that every American, anyone in the world should reach out to their government and demand the truth. So, Yuan, thank you so much for joining us. And next time you talk to Lue, ask him why he titled his book "Imminent." I want to know. I'll ask him as well.
I'm sure he won't tell me.
Yeah, he won't. He definitely won't tell me as well. So, anyway, Yuan, thank you very much for joining us. Most appreciated.
Thank you, Matt. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much. I look forward to having you on again and hearing what else UAPDF is up to. All right. Have a great Sunday. Okay, great. So that was again Yuan Fung, from UAP Disclosure Fund, and as I said, I'm absolutely honored to be working with the members of the board. We have just an amazing group that are part of this. It is truly a powerhouse, and you've got people like Yuan Fung, who is new to the scene, but has just brought amazing energy and focus to this whole thing. We also have Mr. Kirk McConnell, someone that I've known for a while. He just recently retired from Senate Armed Services Committee, who brings an enormous insight to what the UAPDF is up to, as far as what is insight as far as what is going on Capitol Hill and the best way to navigate it. And of course, Lue Elizondo, who as Yuan has mentioned, is, again, it's kind of what's going on below the iceberg. It's not what you see above. And I can tell you absolutely, Lue Elizondo is fighting for all of us, fighting for UAP transparency and demanding that all of this sort of obfuscation come to an end. And him and others on our board are constantly speaking with members of Congress, their staffers, and as I mentioned, these folks in Congress, the ones that sit on Senate Armed Services, Senate Intel, House Intel, House Armed Services. They get to see the classified product. They know this stuff is not a bunch of baloney, despite what you'll hear Sean Kirkpatrick, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. I use the doctor part very lightly. I don't know how the hell he got that degree. But Sean Kirkpatrick, and then you have these absolutely bananas debunkers such as Stephen Greenstreet of the New York Post. I have no idea how he still has a job. I'll just say that. And Mick West and these others that just want you to believe this is all a bunch of baloney when they know full well it is not. That's what my gut tells me. And as I mentioned earlier, I think it's easy for all of us to become frustrated with things maybe not moving as fast as we would like, or we think that there is nothing going on Capitol Hill. But the fact of the matter is that there is a lot going on that folks at home are not aware of. And when the time is right, you will absolutely know about it. But it is important. It is incumbent upon all of us. I mean, you think about all of this stigma that all of us have experienced, and it was all kind of baked into us from our upbringing. And it has been successful. What the CIA and the Pentagon have done in terms of this kind of stigma that they've baked into the discourse of not only just American conversation, but also in political discourse as well. So when you step back and you look at excuse me, these politicians that have really gone out of their way to say publicly, look, we know this is going on, it's got to stop. It's illegal. People like Senator Gillibrand, Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Mark Warner, Congressman Tim Burchett, Congresswoman Paulina Luna, others. I know I'm forgetting folks, but all of these folks, they know full well what is going on, and they know full well, as do tons of people in Congress. I can tell you that. And I can tell you a lot of folks in Congress and their staffers watch this show on a regular basis. They know full well that they are being lied to. And it's almost as the Pentagon and the CIA, they lie straight to Congress. And as soon as they turn around to leave the hearing room, they're snickering to themselves, thinking, you know what, we completely snowballed those folks and they bought all of this BS that we and these lies that we told them. But I can tell you absolutely, members of Congress and their staffers, they know damn well what the Pentagon and the CIA is doing. They know damn well it's un-American. They know damn well it is illegal. And quite frankly, a lot of these folks, when the time has come, I think you will find that a lot of folks are going to, a lot of these folks, I think, or some of them at least, I think will not be, have much freedom in terms of, I think I'll leave it there. But anyway, the long arm of the law never forgets, and certainly people have never forgotten as far as what all has taken place. And I want to touch a little bit on Havana syndrome. I want to touch a little bit on the CIA, and in particular here at the end, I want to give you folks some insight onto what is going on with AARO and what has gone on with AARO. So as I mentioned, and Lester really, I think, spoke about this far more eloquently than I did today in my sort of sugar hyped up state. The CIA, the intelligence community, the CIA, as we've mentioned time and again, they are the portfolio holder of this entire topic. Of course, it goes across all nodes of government, but that is the one-stop shop. That is where all of the lying emanates from. Where all of that comes from and why the Pentagon does it. We have stated that the CIA office of the Directorate of Science and Technology, they have been running this entire crash retrieval and back engineering program out of their Office of Global Access, which, by the way, the CIA has renamed as something else that I can't mention, but I would virtually guarantee it was because we outed them and the illegal activities that they have been up to. So they're calling it something else. One day you'll learn what that is. But the CIA, all of these folks, they what they have been doing is illegal. It flies in the face of the Constitution of the United States. It flies in the face of what it means to be an American, what it means to be a patriot. It is the antithesis. It is the polar opposite of what it means to value freedom and a government that is supposed to be by the people, for the people. Well, instead, what you have is you have the Central Intelligence Agency. You've got the Pentagon, who is staffed like a pig with all of these folks that have come out of the defense establishment, the military-industrial complex, this sort of revolving door where you have these executives in the aerospace companies, the defense contractors that boom, all of a sudden they're a Secretary of Defense, and then all of a sudden they're back as a fat cat lining their pockets with defense contractor dollars. We can point to former director of AARO, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Here he was the director of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. He was there strictly as a shill for ODNI, and once again, as what has happened many times in the past, you've got another guy who gets put into one of these organizations, and his whole goal is to lie and obfuscate. So here you've got Kirkpatrick, who was passing defense dollars on to the Department of Energy with contracts from AARO. He was paying them for material analysis. Kirkpatrick was paying a DOE for advisors to AARO, and lo and behold, following his retirement from AARO, guess who hires him? The Department of Energy, which I don't have the exact federal statute here, but it is in violation of a federal statute that essentially says that any subject matter expert or anyone that is running a program or the director of a program for the Department of Defense, they are not allowed to work for another agency when that agency was the recipient of dollars that director sent to that agency. So you can't go work for AARO, give the DOE a bunch of money, and then when you punch out of AARO, you get hired by them, and you go off into this cushy job. Now, I will say that there could have been an exception. There is a waiver that can happen, but what I would say is, members of Congress, those of you in D.C. that are watching this thing, you need to dig into that. I would personally, get the Department of Energy secretary back in front of you and put her under a subpoena and ask exactly how Sean Kirkpatrick is working in highly classified programs that deal with our nuclear weapons and other things out of the Department of Energy. How is this guy even there? And did he get a waiver for this particular thing? I'll try and dig it up here in a bit. And then the other thing I'll say about Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. So John Greenwald, who I make fun of sometimes of having a side business of selling sex toys online. I have no idea if that's real. And but if this thing that John Greenwald got as far as FOIA communications between Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and I believe it was Christopher Mellon. I'm telling you right now, that is a direct violation of federal policy, federal law. You cannot, as Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, hold the clearances, the top secret clearances he has. It is illegal. It is illegal for Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, while he was acting as the director of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, it is a violation of DOD policy to be conducting those kinds of conversations on a unsecured communications platform such as Signal. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is a black and white security violation for Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick to have been messaging Christopher Mellon about this, and it is the fact that all of that is sitting in the Pentagon as far as records of communication. I mean, that kind of security violation would land just about anybody. It would certainly end up revoking their security clearances. And their tickets that they hold. I dare say if it were anybody that had security clearances that did something like that, they would absolutely lose their clearances. And I can't speak as to whether they would end up in jail. But you have to stop and think what kind of judgment Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick has as an individual. As a national security, as an intelligence professional, what kind of slap-shoddy judgment or lack of judgment do you have to be conducting conversations with somebody that has stuff, a current investigation going on with the ICIG, and I don't know if it's a DODIG, but what kind of clown does that? To me, that is somebody, and as I've said time and time again, before even anybody knew about Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, I was well aware he was being pushed as far as the head of AARO. And I can tell you, absolutely everyone I spoke with that had dealt with Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, they had absolutely nothing good to say about this guy. No one likes him. He is one of these folks that wants to be the smartest guy in the meeting room. This is another individual that seemingly fails up and is just an example of an arrogant bureaucrat that thinks he knows better than everyone else, thinks he's smarter than everyone else. That goes and bamboozles United States senators. And they're smarter than that. They know what he's up to. This guy was put in place by the former director of ODNI, Ronald Moultrie. He was placed there to tow the water for ODNI. He was placed there to lie to Congress. And I think at one point, Sean Kirkpatrick even said jokingly, you know what, I'm an intelligence official. You should expect me to be lying to you. Well, you know what? People did. But just the fact this guy who clearly wasted probably millions of dollars in taxpayer money, and then goes and then he lands this cushy job at a DOE. That was his golden parachute. That was his attaboy for doing exactly what the CIA wanted him to do, which was to stand up AARO and make it this flypaper operation to catch people, whistleblowers, to come in, tell them what they know, so that he could then go and pass it up along the chain of command. So CIA knew exactly what these whistleblowers were telling the DODIG and the ICIG with their PPD-19 protected disclosure things. So you have that, but then even like on the surface level, this historical report that is just that Sean Kirkpatrick obviously authored. It is. I don't have kids, but if I had an 8-year-old or 9-year-old that was creating a report for their science teacher or a report for their English class or political science class, they would have done a job 100 times better than Sean Kirkpatrick. It was just the epitome of just slap-shoddy, not knowing what the hell he's doing, a piece of just garbage that cost the taxpayers, all of us, a ton of money. And this is the kind of stuff he gives to Congress? This is the kind of stuff that AARO gave to Congress? Because I can virtually guarantee you the classified version of what AARO gave to the appropriate, the authorized recipients in Congress was probably just as bad, if not worse, than what we, the public, saw. And then you have to ask yourself, well, how is this guy working for Oak Ridge National Laboratory, one of the major laboratories that deals with our highly classified nuclear secrets? How can the Department of Energy have this guy in there who is running around talking to the press, peddling these conspiracy theories that members of Congress have been hoodwinked by a bunch of UFO fanatics? I mean, it is just beyond reason how somebody like that can be working in our government on our government's most classified programs. How this guy, how this clown has his security clearances after all of that, after trashing David Grusch. I mean, it was brutally honest. This guy was on an intelligence mission. It was an operation to disparage and convince members of Congress that David Grusch was full of it. But members of Congress and their staffers are way smarter than Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. It is, they know better. But when you step back and you look at the fact that a former intelligence, somebody that is a intelligence professional for who knows how long, working for intelligence agencies, as Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick did, how this guy gets put in place by the head of ODNI, the Office of Secretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, which, oh, by the way, OUSD-INS, they have visibility into absolutely every single special access program, waived or not. They know. And oh, by the way, that is the organization that has engaged in continual retaliation against whistleblowers. We know that from Lue Elizondo, that is exactly where that came from. Those are the people that tried to destroy his security clearances. Those are the people that flagged his clearances to make sure that he would not get another job working in anything that required a security clearance in the world of defense or intelligence. These are the folks that did that. And these are the exact same folks that put Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick as the head of AARO. Undersecretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks and others, they were absolutely panicked when Senator Gillibrand went to stand up AOI-MSG. I may have that acronym wrong, but that was the congressional office that Senator Gillibrand was standing up because she knew damn well that the Pentagon and the IC, the intelligence community, were lying to her face. So she goes to stand up that committee, and guess what happens? Undersecretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks, in a panic, puts together their version of it, which ended up, of course, being AARO. All of this whole AARO thing is a farce. It is a fly-paper operation to try and attract whistleblowers to spill the beans, spill the secrets, so that they can tell their people up the chain of command exactly what they're going and these whistleblowers are telling the inspector generals. It's exactly what that thing is, and they cannot be trusted. Absolutely not. Now, I will say that I know for a fact there are good people in AARO, men and women, that are trying to do the right thing. This isn't about those folks. It isn't about the scientists. It's about members of AARO, people that are there from Air Force Office of Special Investigations, who are there to lie, flat out lie, to members of Congress. That is why they are there. They are not there to get to the truth. I can tell you for a fact, they have a Tic Tac case, a highly classified Tic Tac case, a recent one that is highly classified, that has reams of high-resolution sensor data that they are hiding from Congress. They are not telling Congress about it. As a matter of fact, the way AARO is operating right now, they are giving all of the prosaic stuff. That is the stuff, the airborne trash, McWest seagulls, all of that stuff. Those are the cases that they are showing to Congress. They're saying, here, look, it's airborne trash. Here, it's a bird. Here, it's a Chinese drone. Here, it's a Russian drone. They are not passing Tim Phillips, head of AARO, who was brought on, I think, by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick as his deputy. He is not giving that to members of Congress. He is not giving the mountain of evidence that AARO has collected of non-human craft operating in our airspace. He is not passing to Congress, to congressional staffers, the reams of data that they have that clearly indicate that our military does not have positive control of their restricted airspace. They're not telling Congress this. They are hiding it from them. They are lying to Congress. Period. The end. That is what is going on. So when you think, this Tim Phillips guy is maybe there to do some good, I can tell you 100% right now, he is not. He is here on Odie and I's behalf. He is there on detail from Odie and I. And his job, he is doing what he is being told. He is following like a good soldier what the people up the chain are wanting. And I can tell you what they want. They don't want Congress to continue digging into this. They don't want Congress legislating on this. And how do you do that? You lie to Congress. How do you do that? You tell Congress there's absolutely nothing to see here. It's all seagulls and balloons and quadcopters and it's all prosaic. There's really nothing to see here. Maybe there are a couple of things that we can't explain, but by and large, folks in Congress, we're at AARO. We know exactly what we're doing, and we can tell you there's nothing to see here. The leadership of AARO is a carbon copy of what Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick did. It is no better. I had great hope that maybe they would do the right thing. But leadership of AARO is not. So members of Congress and staffers that watch this show, mark my words, you can take this to the bank. The head of AARO, Tim Phillips, he is not being truthful with you. There is a mountain of evidence he is hiding from you. So when he comes in and he gives these presentations and he tells you there is nothing to see here, it's a lie. Flat out. And it's time, all of you in Congress that care about this and those of you that don't, it is time to hold these people to account. It is time to bring these people in, put them under oath in a skiff, and demand that they come clean with you. Because I can tell you right now, they are not coming clean. They are hiding an awful lot. And they know that they're doing it. And they know that it's illegal, and they know that it's wrong, and they do not give a damn. Plain and simple. Which leads me to this hearing that Senator Gillibrand is wanting to do and have Tim Phillips be there to testify. Senator Gillibrand has been on my show. I know her staffers. They are some of the smartest people I have ever met in politics. They know what is going on, and all of us. In my opinion, Senator Gillibrand, we owe her an incredible debt of gratitude for getting us to where we are. And she is just an incredibly smart lady that is trying to do the right thing. And what I would just say to Senator Gillibrand and her staffers is it is, in my view, a mistake to have the head of AARO, Tim Phillips, come in and talk to Congress about this, because he's not going to be honest, plain and simple. And all it is going to do is give the Pentagon and the CIA a PR moment, that the Pentagon Public Affairs Officer Susan Goff and others, the members of the CIA leadership that know damn well what they're doing, and the Pentagon, it is going to give them a PR, a public relations moment for them to get out exactly like Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick did, who can't freaking plan his way out of a paper bag, let alone write a report. It is going to give them a PR moment to sit in front of the public and say, there's nothing to see here, folks. It's just airborne trash, clutter, seagulls, and and all of that. And that it's nothing. And I venture to guess when Tim Phillips gets up there, some member of Congress is going to ask him about David Grusch. And I virtually guarantee you they are going to do something that is going to cast doubt on what David Grusch, an American patriot who's done probably more for this country than 99% of us, they're going to try and throw him under the bus, which is exactly what Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick did. It's going to be no different. It's going to be more of the same. So when for Senator Gillibrand and other members of Congress, when you only have so much political capital to expend and so many opportunities to put this in a public forum where 90%, 99% of the public that has absolutely no idea about what is going on. So when you're going to go up there and platform the director or the sitting director of Aero, give him the opportunity to platform a bunch of BS in a public setting that the press is going to lock onto, he'll probably say no. He'll put some kind of soundbite out there. No evidence of extraterrestrials or no evidence of space aliens. They like to use that one. Why they use that is they know full well that the mainstream press, the people that are carrying the water for the Pentagon, such as Julian Barnes of the New York Times, and this group of debunkers who are clearly on somebody's payroll, that's what they'll lock onto. That'll be the headline in the New York Post. No evidence of space aliens, because it's exactly what Tim Phillips of Aero is going to march out there and say when asked by some member of Congress. It is the exact reason why I don't have people like Mick West or whoever the clown at New York Post, what's his name, Greenstreet. Why I don't have them on my show? Because I'm not going to platform somebody who is up to no good, who knows exactly what they're doing. They know that they're not being truthful. I'm not going to put them on my show and give them a platform to spout their bullshit. And it should be no different for you and for all of you in Congress that are coming up with this witness list. You put Aero up there. That is exactly what they're going to do. And by then you've spent your political capital. Another year is going to go by. New York Times, New York Post are going to run headlines. No evidence of space aliens in some kind of Senate or House hearing, and it's going to put egg on your face. And all of you in Congress, you don't deserve this. You don't deserve to be treated like a bunch of fools, like the Pentagon and the CIA is trying to do. It is such a level of disrespect for all of you that we elect in this office. It's an insult to all of you that are serving your constituents, and it's an insult to Americans in general. The arrogance of the CIA, the arrogance of the Pentagon, in getting up in front of all of you in Congress and lying to your face, and they know full well they are doing it. These people are not stupid. Ronald Moultrie, again, who was the head of the Office of Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. Him, along with the guy from I'm blanking on his name, Scott Bray, It looks like I think he won some kind of a reality cooking show competition with Gordon Ramsay. He goes up there with Ronald Moultrie to testify in front of the House. I forgot what committee it was, to testify in front of Congress about UAP, the first time in I don't know, close to 100 years. And guess what? Ronald Moultrie did not want to receive any briefings on UAP before that hearing. He only wanted to be briefed after he was done testifying. And you want to know why? So he would have plausible deniability. These are the kinds of games they play to mess with Congress, to give Congress the middle finger. Congressman Tim Burchett has spoken about that. What they will do is, all of this stuff is so stovepiped, so classified, that I wouldn't be surprised if Scott Bray didn't know what was going on. They put people in the chair that have limited visibility into a particular topic that they know they're not going to be able to really comment about, so that they can honestly say, I have no information about X. I have no information about UAPs interfering with our land-based strategic nuclear deterrent. So Scott Bray of the Navy can get up there and say it because he doesn't know. He hasn't been read into those things. The security classification guide on UAP is at the secret level. That's where it's classified. Anything above that is TSSCI. It's anything that has to do with these SAPs. Those people may not have had the ticket to be read into those SAPs and controlled access programs. So here you've got Scott Bray, who probably does not know a lot. He probably knows some. I mean, clearly he does, but guess what? He has his minder sitting right next to him, Ronald Moultrie, who probably knows enough to, and I think you saw it in that hearing where he kind of shut Bray down when I think Bray kind of went a little bit out of his lane. But then you've got Moultrie, who refuses to get briefed on UAP before he goes into the freaking hearing, so he can sit there and tell Congress without perjuring himself, which I don't think he was even under oath, that he knows nothing about this, or the specific questions he was given, he danced around. These are the kinds of games the CIA and the Pentagon are playing with our members of Congress and the American public, and it is absolutely wrong. It is absolutely wrong. And the other thing I'll say too, that I would venture to guess with a fairly good knowledge that President Biden is not aware of probably all of this, and that if I were a guessing man, I would say decisions have been made that he has a lot on his plate, and that he doesn't need to know about it. And it's this kind of decision making regarding our national leadership that does not do any of us any favors. I mean, I'm a Democrat, voted for President Biden. I'm going to vote for him again. He's got a lot on his plate. He's not a spring chicken. Neither is Trump. Hopefully one day we'll have some presidential nominees that are not above 70 years old. But the point is that for people on the National Security Council to make decisions that presidents don't need to know about this, it's a mistake, and it's not. We don't put people in office for this. Ross Coulthart mentioned that President Trump was briefed on the UAP issue, and he got cold feet about it. This is something I've known about for a number of months. I chose not to speak about it, but I can tell you that with good knowledge that is indeed true. And and I have no idea if Trump wins. And again, I'm a bleeding liberal here. I hope he doesn't win, but if he does, that may be something he dumps. So what I would say to my fellow Democrats is, and to President Biden, let's say that Trump does win, And let's just say Trump has made the decision to dump this to the public. All of you former presidents, and I don't think any of you are watching the show, but maybe some of your staffers are. The thing you guys really should consider is your legacy. So let's say that, God forbid, Trump wins, and he decides to dump all of this. A lot of people are going to be asking all of the former presidents, what did you know? When did you know it? Did you know that the CIA and the Pentagon were lying to the American public? And, oh, by the way, this doesn't really speak well to your presidential legacy. So if it were me and I were President Biden, I would be thinking to myself, I would be asking questions of your National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. I would be asking to see all of the minutes of all of the classified minutes of National Security Council meetings, in particular NSC meetings related to UAP. If I were the president, I would be asking to see what was spoken about when I wasn't there. I think President Biden would probably be wildly surprised at some of the decisions that have been made. And look, I am in the UAP world, in my personal world, sure, I'm a Democrat, but in what I'm doing here, I am straight down the middle. I am bipartisan. I support any member of Congress. I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat that is doing good work on the UAP issue. And I can tell you absolutely that there are people on both sides of the aisle that I may not politically agree with, even members of my own party, but they are doing really good work, and they are showing bravery that, frankly, a lot of politicians have not in the past. But if I were the president, I would be wildly cognizant of what your legacy is going to be, because it is going to come out, and when it comes out, it is going to come out like a dam that broke. And there are going to be things that the American public is not going to be very happy to hear about. And the American public and the world in general, they are going to be demanding answers. They're going to want to know what people knew, when they knew it, who maybe was taken out over this, whose careers were destroyed, whose families were destroyed, what whistleblowers were targeted by CIA cutouts or security contractors working for defense aerospace companies. They're going to want to know when you knew about when maybe things come into your house that you can't protect your family from. These are the questions that are going to be asked of our national leadership, but it's also these are questions that are not going to be asked of our present leadership. These are going to be questions asked of our former presidents, our former national security officials, our former secretaries of defense, our former directors of the CIA, our former vice presidents. They are going to ask you on camera what you knew, when you knew it, and why you lied about it to all of us. So when you stop and you think to yourself, you know what, American public is never going to find out I did all this for national security. You got a rude awakening coming. Mark my words. And I will say this to anyone. A while back, a person that is in the intelligence community told me flat out, a lot of people in Washington, D.C., both on the Hill and in DOD and IC, a lot of people now watch your show and they listen to everything you say. And And also, there are a lot of bad people in D.C. that watch and listen to what you have to say, and they're very much paying attention to it. And when you get told something like that, it really makes you take pause. And I know that I am very vocal in calling out the CIA and the Pentagon as far as the illegal things that they have done and that they continue to do. The Air Force, in particular, the Air Force Office of Special Investigation, that has been complicit in things that would land just about anyone in jail. When I talk about that, I do not talk about it as a monolithic statement. There are good people, good men and women in the CIA. There are good men and women in Aero. There are good men and women in Pentagon who are trying to do the right thing. They see that what has been going on is an abomination of democracy. And I'm quite sure, I would guarantee it, that members of the intelligence community, members of the Pentagon, senior executive service level folks that have been doing all of this stuff sort of rogue, sort of this deep state. I used to make fun of Trump all the time about all of his deep state stuff, but you know what? Trump was right about all of that, and unfortunately, it is true. And as a Democrat, it was a very hard thing for me to swallow. And once I kind of was given visibility into a lot of the bad things that our government has done over Democratic and Republican administrations, it's kind of finding out about Santa Claus, that things are not exactly as you see, or as you've been told all of your life, that our democracy is not exactly what we were all taught in school and what we hear from some of the talking heads on the mainstream media on both the left and the right. But what I would say to the folks in CIA and the Pentagon that are wrestling with this, as my mom always told me, it's not the lie, it's the cover-up that ends up being so bad, and the continual lying that must go on to cover up the original sin. What I would say to anyone that works in DoD IC that is saying to themselves, you know what? I'm just going to continue to kick this can down the road. There are all of these host of reasons that we need to keep this locked away. The least of which is that we've done some really, really illegal things over all of these decades, all of these things that the public would absolutely lose their shit over if we admitted to what we had been doing all along. There is going to come a reckoning when all of this comes out. And mark my words, it is going to come out, and it is going to come out like you have no idea what is coming. And it is the path to reconciliation is better now than after. You will find anybody in DoD and IC that's, or the SES folks that are the gatekeepers. And by the way, I know one of you, I know your name, exactly who you are. I don't know that I'll release it, but I know damn well who one of you are, and the public will be very surprised if this comes out. It's not my information to hand out. But when it comes out, all of you, particularly the 50-ish or so SES folks that have been gatekeeping this whole thing across multiple nodes of government, when the public finds out, and they find out your names, and they will, people are gonna be enraged. And it is not going to go well for you legally. I guarantee you that. And the same thing the same thing goes for the folks in the Pentagon and the CIA, the folks in Directorate of Science and Technology, and the folks telling the Office of Global Access what to do. The same people that are sending half of these crashed vehicles off to private aerospace with absolutely no congressional oversight, because you're hiding it from the Gang of Eight, who are supposed to be read into all this stuff. It is not going to go well for all of you that continue to hide this and lie when you know damn well it's illegal. You know damn well a lot of what you guys have been doing are felonies. You know damn well that what you've been doing would land 90% of us in jail if we were doing the same thing. But you clearly don't seem to care. But you need to stop and think. Know this, that if you come out now and come clean with the American public and you say, you know what, we did certain things that at the time we thought were the right things for the country and the world in the name of national security. We were fighting a Cold War. And what was originally, for very good reason, sort of metastasized into this perverse cancer that is a existential threat to our liberal democracy. And you just say, hey, look, we made mistakes. We're human. It's a complicated issue. It's a big ball of yarn. And the longer it went on, the deeper the hole we dug. And you just say, hey, look, this is what happened. We can't tell you everything, but this is what we can tell you without jeopardizing national security. I guarantee you the American public is going to be much more understanding and forgiving. And for that matter, everyone in the world is going to be much more understanding if you just admit you effed up. It didn't turn out the way it was supposed to. You were being told up the chain what you were supposed to. Decisions were being made that perhaps you didn't have any say in. The American public, Americans in general, are going to be much more understanding if you just come clean. Because I've got news for you. Something is coming. They are going to find out. Those of you that in the Pentagon and the IC that think this is the 1950s, where you can trot out Susan Goff or whoever in your Pentagon Public Affairs office and tell the public there's nothing to see here. You can parade out Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and put him on a exclusive press tour to tell all of these folks, everyone in the press, that there's nothing here, that Lue Elizondo and David Grusch are full of it. It is going to be a come to Jesus like you've never seen. So it's time to take pause and ask yourself, do I want to do the right thing for the country and the oath that you swore to the Constitution? Or do you want to keep lining your pockets, doing favors for the national security state? And you know, when it comes time, when this stuff comes out, and mark my words, it'll come out, and names will come out. You're going to wish you had. You're going to wish that you did the right thing, and that you did the right thing, and that you wore the uniform with honor. You upheld the Constitution of the United States, and that you'll be able to wake up in the morning and look at your kids in the face with a straight face, and know that you know what, I finally just came clean and did the right thing, and admitted to everyone I made some mistakes. I manned up, and you know what, I decided to do the right thing for my country. And it is not 1952. Doesn't matter what you do with Susan Goff. Doesn't matter what you do with Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. It doesn't matter what you do with Undersecretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks going out and making statements. It doesn't matter what you do. You are never going to put this toothpaste back in the bag or back in the tube. So when you trot your folks out in front of Congress, when you trot the interim director of Aero out to make all of these platitudes that are lies to the American public and to Congress, and you think that they're buying it hook, line, and sinker, they are not. They know what you're doing. They know that it's wrong. They know that it's illegal. And these folks in Congress know that it is time for them to take back their constitutionally mandated duty of congressional oversight, which means controlling the purse strings and means making sure the Pentagon and the intelligence community are not doing illegal things. And they know that you guys are, plain and simple. What the Pentagon and the CIA are doing with Arrow is nothing short of an American travesty. It is when you put something like that together and you're getting all this data that you know damn well this isn't China or Russia. When people in Arrow, when leadership, I'll say this, when I say leadership in Arrow knows that these drone incursions are not drones, members of Congress, you need to put another thing I meant to mention earlier. These drone incursions that are happening over Langley and all of these restricted airspace things, I've got news for you. They know these are not drones. They know that these are UAP using signature management. So when you've got folks from Arrow, when you've got folks from CIA, and you've got folks from the Pentagon talking to members of Congress in skiffs, and perhaps they are telling you that these are drones, they don't know where they're coming from, guess what? They're lying to you. They know they may not know exactly where they're coming from, but they know that it's not from Russia. They know it's not from China. They know it's not from a state actor. They know this, and they are lying to you about it. And it is part of this whole thing of Arrow not telling Congress, not showing them the goods of what they've got. And the only way you're going to wrestle this out of them is to put these folks under oath and have them sitting there, knowing that they are that they could possibly perjure themselves. This is what you've got to do. You cannot put these folks. Understand, members of Congress, as a courtesy, do not want to put these national security officials under oath. It's a sign of respect, but. You know what? When you've got these folks showing up at your committees and they're talking to you and they're lying to your face, you want to talk about lack of respect. I can't think of anything worse than what they are doing. So I'll just say this. Anybody in DOD I see that's watching this, it is going to come out. This is not 1950s where you can trot out and just tell the American public nothing's going on here and the American public is going to buy it hook, line, and sinker. We are in a different age. We are in the age of the internet. We're in the age when there are shows like mine and others that are speaking truth to power. We know full well that most of the American public does not believe much of what the government says. It is sad that many Americans do not trust the elements, the government and the pillars that hold up this democracy. And the longer you kick that can down the road, when it comes out, and it is gonna come out, and it is gonna come out soon. You think you were worried about people not trusting the government? When you've kicked that can down the road, screaming hook, line, and sinker? When it comes out, you want to talk about an incalculable amount of damage to the foundations of our American government. That's going to do it. And it's not going to be because of any of us. It's going to be because all of you in the Pentagon and the CIA and the 50-ish or so senior executive service level folks that have been driving this whole damn thing. When you go and you wonder what happened to American trust in government, you know who to blame? Go look in the mirror and look at yourself. because you were part of that. And you chose not to do the right thing for our democracy. You've got another thing coming if you think that you're putting this back in the tube. It is coming out. Names are going to come out. Names that people in the public are going to recognize. And the public will be enraged like you have never, ever seen. I guarantee it. And I'll finally say this, and this circles back to what we were talking about with anomalous health injuries and Havana syndrome. I was, well, kind of two things. Speaking to Mark Zaid, being a friend of the former Homeland Security Advisor to Mike Pence, Olivia Troy, and people that have suffered from AHI, anomalous health injuries, whose family suffers from anomalous health injuries from this Havana syndrome thing, children who have to this day physical damage to them from being deployed with their parent on a detail working for State Department or some other three-letter agency where they were hit with Havana syndrome. There are around 2,000 of these folks that were targeted or were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, hit by Havana syndrome. The CIA, they know about all this, and they've been lying about it. And look, I understand in the CIA and the government, when you come clean about this, the public is going to ask a lot of questions. And if this is indeed all Russia, they're going to demand answers. But all you have to do when you listen to a lot of this and you go, man, this sounds like just a bunch of conspiracies and whatnot. And, and I have to say, if I didn't have the relationships I have with people that hold security clearances, the relationships that I have with people in Congress, and others elsewhere, I probably wouldn't have believed half of it either. But all you got to do is sit back and look at the public history of the Pentagon hiding things and lying to the public, be it Gulf War syndrome, be it about a sexual assault in the military that thank God Senator Gillibrand held the Pentagon's feet to the fire. The church committee or church commission that took place in 1973, where it turned out that the Central Intelligence Agency was lying to public about things like programs to assassinate national leaders. There was one program that came out in the Senate Church Committee that the Army and the CIA had developed it was either a chemical or biological weapons program that they hid from Congress. The fact that the CIA for decades during the Cold War had on the payroll over 400 American journalists, editors, and people in the mainstream media. They were paying either with cash or quid pro quo favors to go and peddle CIA propaganda to the American public and to the world. I mean, you can go look it up. All of this is there. There is a long history of the Pentagon and the CIA lying to all of you at home. And you can look it up anywhere. It's in there. Go look it up in congressional records. It's there. So when you stop and you go, you know what, all this stuff sounds bananas. When you back up and you look at the history of what the Pentagon and the CIA has done for decades, it all computes. It all it all tracks. And just the fact that you have the Pentagon and the CIA and other three-letter agencies that are willing to throw under the bus our veterans men and women that have given everything, some have given it all, to serve our country, to make sure all of us are free. National security officials working for CIA or NSC or others that are detailed on State Department assignments that suffer from AHI, anomalous health injuries. When you've got whistleblowers like David Grusch and Lue Elizondo that have been threatened by CIA cutouts. What I mean by CIA cutouts, when the CIA needs to do something dirty that they need to insulate themselves from, they use what's called a cutout. So it'll be a shell company or a security contractor that is removed by second and third order, so it can't be traced back to them. So any of the dirty work that the CIA needs to do, they use these things called cutouts to do their dirty work. So when Lue Elizondo is having to provide a statement on my show saying, you know what, if something happens to me, it wasn't an accident, it wasn't a drunk driver, it wasn't a petty theft, it wasn't suicide, it wasn't an alcohol overdose, it wasn't a drug overdose. When you have somebody like Lue Elizondo that has to go out in public and make that kind of statement, so that if, God forbid, something does happen to him and these threats that he and others receive actually come to fruition, it is sad. It is sad for all of us that is what our government has come to. It is sad that we have a Pentagon and a Central Intelligence Agency that treats our democracy like it's some kind of military junta. It's not what our founding fathers intended for all of us and for all of our children. And when you have these kinds of threats of physical violence against whistleblowers, harassment. I know of one individual that is a scientist that is doing incredible work on this topic, that is being targeted right now by members of the intelligence community. That is, this person has had their hard drives wiped out magically. This person has been walking home and had a person walk by and whip out their cell phone and start taking photos as they're walking by. Being blatantly obvious about it, not for intelligence collection, but for pure intimidation. All of this has gone on for decades, and it is still going on. And anybody in Congress that is watching this, be it a staffer or a lawmaker, you can take this to the bank. The CIA and the Pentagon, they are doing things that are certainly felonies in my view. And when you are targeting not only American citizens but members of other countries with harassment by your intelligence operatives, when you are going out and wiping out people's hard drives, when you are wiping people's phones, when you are sending either people out of security contractors or your people out of whatever country you're running your covert operatives out of to go and harass scientists, follow them around and take photos with their phones. When you've got scientists that are receiving messages from people saying, oh, by the way, I'm monitoring all of your communications, so that you scare these scientists off from doing the work that they're doing, non-government scientists, I would mind you. Folks in Congress, this is the kind of stuff that's going on. And don't take my word for it. All you need to do is bring people in, throw them in a skiff, and have them swear on the Bible that they're going to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God. You put these officials in a position where they can perjure themselves and go to jail. members of Congress and staffers that work on these classified committees, that those of you that hold the security clearances and the tickets to receive, to be the authorized recipient of classified intelligence product, you need to put these folks in the chair, leadership from CIA and the Pentagon. You need to put them under oath, and you need to ask them what the hell they're doing. Because what they're doing is not what you think they're doing. And if I were a foreign country and I would say with confidence they are quite aware of some of the dirty things that we have been up to, man, I would say, you know what, this U.S. democracy is a farce. It's a joke. And at the end of the day, all of you, the 50-ish or so gatekeepers, some of which, we know your names. You just have to stop and ask yourself, look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? Am I upholding the oath I swore to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic? When you look at the mirror and you think about enemies, domestic enemies, you need to take a long, hard look at yourself and ask yourself, am I standing up for my country? Am I doing the right thing? Am I handing my children a democracy and a government that I would be proud of? I think if you look at yourself honestly in the mirror and you ask yourself that question and you search deep down in your soul, the things that you know that you've been involved with, programs that you've been involved with, or policy decisions that you've been involved with, that you know deep in your heart are not right. You got to look at yourself in the mirror and you got to ask yourself, is this the man or woman I want to be? And is this the parent I want to be to my children? And is this the kind of country I want to leave for the people, for the children that'll be here when I'm gone? Because I think if you look at yourself in the mirror and you think about the things that you've done and the decisions that you've made, and you really dig deep down and think about it, you know that you have not held up your duty and your oath to the Constitution of the United States. And it's time you do. It's time you do it for yourself. It's time you do it for all of us that are watching, all of people in the world and Americans. But you know what? If anything, just do it for your kids. So you can look at them with a straight face, and you can say to them, you know what? I did the right thing. Because it's time you do.